America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everyone. Patty, you take roll call, please.
Here.
Gary.
Yeah.
Ray.
Here.
Denver.
Here.
Here. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome guests, visitors, media. Want to know if you do want to speak on the public comment portion of the meeting today on an item that is not on the agenda. There's a sign-in sheet in the back. At the end of the meeting, we'll have everybody, whoever signed in, will have their time to speak to the commission. At this time, is there any matters on today's agenda that any commissioners needs to abstain from due to a financial conflict of interest?
No.
I don't either, but I'd just like to say that I've had a lot of people ask me if we could change the time of the comments from the end of the meeting to the beginning. They feel that they sit around here and they wait for the meeting to be completed, and then they have 3 minutes to speak. So that's just a comment that I've heard from several constituents.
Thank you. Any reason you need to abstain for a non-financial interest, conflict of interest?
No.
All right. Any additions or changes to today's agenda? Hearing none, I entertain a motion to approve.
Second.
A motion, we have a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. First item on the agenda is the approval of the August 7th minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review the August 7th minutes? And is there any corrections or notations?
No.
Move approval of the minutes.
Don, you cannot move you're absent, so. Anyone else want to make a motion to approve the minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to make say there that on motion 18312 Charlie at the end, that everyone motioned to, in the positive, to go to executive session except for Mr. Swenson. It doesn't mention there that Mr. Swenson did not attend executive session. I think that should be not attended.
Okay. Any other additions or corrections? With the noted change, can I get a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve the amendments as amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is claims. Has everyone had a chance to review the claims that was presented to us? If there are no questions on the claims, I'd entertain a motion.
Move to approve the claims.
Second.
Have a motion, have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next is the August payroll. Any questions in regards to the August payroll? If there are none, I'd entertain a motion.
Move approval of the August payroll.
We have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Second, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next is, Patty, is a lease agreement for the Department of Ag for the Extension Building.
They had talked to Danielle and they do have an extra room and she said that was fine with them.
So this is not a renewal of a lease, this is a new lease.
Yep.
Okay, that was
For
my own.
$87.50.
That's what they're paying us,
Correct.
in rent.
And they will have their own telephone, internet service.
And we just pay the utilities, which we're already doing.
Electricity and
Yes.
such you're referring to.
Yes.
Because they'll pay for their own phone lines and their own internet, correct?
Right.
That was my only question. Any comments on lease agreement? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion.
Move to approve the
lease agreement, Department of Ag for extension building.
Second.
Got a motion, we have a second, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And then, also underneath the auditor is the engagement letter from the South Dakota Department of Legislative Audit. Right now, our audit is actually in the process. They've been here, what, about a week?
Correct.
Correct? So this is just a formality and just for the, to approve the engagement letter. Everyone's had a chance to read the engagement letter. Are there any questions in regards to the engagement letter?
Will they finish this week, or how much longer will it go?
I'm not sure.
Is this,
At least 2 or 3 weeks, probably.
is this annual?
This is the buy-in.
Biennial.
If there are no questions, I'd entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the engagement letter from the South Dakota Department of Legislative Audit.
A motion, is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Is it correct to assume that this is another cross-check on policies and procedures as conducted by the Yes.
Treasurer, us, sheriff, all county,
They're already,
not all departments, but
they're already in our books essentially.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, here, I'm gonna sign these before we move on.
Time for hearing.
All right. Next item on the agenda is the revenue bond request hearing, Yankton Protein LLC, and Dakota Protein LLC. So at this time, I'll turn the podium over to you, Mr. Morris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, audience, Toby Morris. I know I'm not an unfamiliar face, haven't been here several years for quite a few times. I specialize in economic development, public finance, tax increment work. And what I'm going to attempt to do today is sort of make sense of a federal process. What we have going before you is a federal process, and I'm going to go through in more detail of that. But I'm going to first start out with what is Dakota Protein. Dakota Protein is a company that was recently formed here in South Dakota that acquired the rights to what's a grain densification system. In other words, what it does is it buys the DDGs from an ethanol plant through the proprietary technology. It's actually made in Ord, Nebraska. They do a hot and then a cold extrusion process, all natural, no chemicals involved whatsoever, and develops a higher protein feed. So it comes out in what I call cute little cake mix and also pellet, or the pellet and then the tubs that are also made with that. The intent is to construct about a 45,000 square foot building. The location, I call it the Dakota Plains Ag Center Industrial Park out there. So we know it has the roads, the access. Important for this company is going to be the rail. To give you an idea of what they're going to be looking at starting out, 10 to 12 employees, payroll is going to be over $500,000. Total project cost between the building, the equipment, the land acquisition, everything on that is right at about $15 million. I put in there that the manufacture of pellets and not in the CAFO business. We have nothing to do with that. I like challenges, but I don't go to the CAFO challenges, so we're not anything to involve with the animal side. The product is sold, distributed nationally. Part of the rail park and the reason for wanting to locate out there was access to that rail and why it's been so important to companies like this as well as other companies I know that are looking out there. It's a clean business. This is an example of what the Ord tub press looks like. Very, very highly automated. The equipment in itself is about $9 million. Very technical kind of jobs that will be required out there. So as you can see, there won't be the chemicals, there won't be the pollution. It's going to be a very clean manufacturing site. But why are we here today? And this is interesting, and this is where I said I'm going to attempt to make logic of an illogical thing called the federal government. What happens is the feds have a volume cap. They have an allocation. It's not money. It's just simply an allocation that the feds distribute each year to each state. And it's designed to help specific industries. And in this case, it's to provide industrial development projects specifically relating to agriculture. You can do manufacturing. You can do home ownership. You can do student loans. There's a lot of things you cannot do, very limited things of what you can do with this. Because Dakota Protein takes, what's interesting now, is the DDGs, and I know there's probably some farmers or ranchers in here, which is considered a waste product of an ethanol plant. Because it takes a waste product, converts it into a usable product, it then now qualifies for the federal program of the volume cap. The volume cap is nothing more than the amount issued to that. So each state, as I said, receives this amount, where it's going. And what we do in South Dakota is we receive approximately $300 million every year, typically used on housing. South Dakota Housing does it for the first-time homer. They do it for if you're into restricted rental rates. They are the typical user of it. Ohio, as an example, receives $1.1 billion. If you go to Ohio, there's a waiting list to get on that. Unfortunately, in South Dakota, or fortunately, it depends on how you look at it, we don't have a waiting list, but it's also what I would call a coupon that never gets used. And that's where I get into the allocation. And this is interesting. It's not any money. No money comes from the feds to the state to the local process. It's simply just making sure that you qualify within this. There's some archaic words because, again, the IRS uses the same process they put in place per, I believe, the 1983 tax code. So why are we coming to the county here today? And this is why, and these are key words to focus on. To receive tax-exempt status, and by that I mean they do not receive tax-exempt status for property tax. It's simply on the interest that they pay on the note that they receive. They are the borrower. But to do that, because of the IRS and their great wisdom, they say, we still have to have a government issuer because they're the issuer of any tax-exempt. And so whether you do through what's called an authority, GOED, Governor's Office of Economic Development has authority, counties are able to do it, cities are able to do it, they are nothing more than the issuer. You're a conduit. The government is not the borrower, and that's the key words I really can't stress enough right here, is who is the borrower. There's no guarantee on the federal, the state, the county, of if this loan ever goes bad. That's between the borrower, which is Dakota Protein, as we've shown here. Is there information reporting on that? Yes, from the borrower side, because if you're ever involved with federal programs, there's no shortage of paperwork that's involved. But when you're borrowing $8 million and you can lower your interest rate because you qualify, those nuances, that extra paperwork makes sense to go through it for the outstanding period of when that loan may be. In order to do this, you have to receive the allocation from the state. The state's the holder of it. Working with the governor's office and Governor Dugard, they have already stated, yes, we will allocate this over because we see that it qualifies. How do we know that it qualifies? We retain some of the top bond counsel in the state, Todd Meyer-Henry with Meyer-Henry Sargent, and then we've also received what's called the bank counsel by Barnes Thornburg out of Minneapolis. Nationally known, does thousands of these a year, represents in every state, so we know we qualify based on what the federal requirements are. Now I'm going to get down a little bit into the weeds here, but to show you the broadness of what's considered these private activity bonds. You can do the single family homes, the student loan center up in Aberdeen. they issue that. Why is it students can borrow at low or less interest than the rest of us? Because if they qualify, because they're issuing on a tax exempt basis. 501c3s, nursing homes are a big borrower of these. You see a lot of that. And then where we qualify is that small issue bonds, they called IDBs. There's specific things that the money can be used on, and I apologize for the small print on this, so that you can see it's not going to developer fees, it's not going to archaic, whatever it may be. Even though they're borrowing the money, it can only be used on land and construction of a building. It can only be used on the acquisition of new equipment, as we pay here. No location restrictions, so it's not sensitive to a poverty level, whatever, but rather it just says if you wish to locate in a business park like we have here, the federal government's not going to restrict that. They're going to give me plenty of other restrictions I have to jump the hoop through, but not here. So this is something that can be used statewide. Why are we here today? Because we have to have what's called a TEFRA notice. It's basically to inform the public of where that tax exempt money is going to go. It's a public hearing that we put in there. We let them know these are some of the limitations that we have to put on ourselves, the 120% bond maturity, the cost of issuance. These are all things that fall within what's going to be called their TEFRA notice. But as it says right here, it's the opportunity to comment on the use of the tax exempt funds by the borrower. The use in this case, I cannot stress enough, are the new jobs, the $15 million into a park that was designed for something like this on an all-natural, no pollution product that can really help on the value-added side by creating another market for DDGs, and we know how that can flow back to the basis of corn. Benefits, as I said, borrowing at lower possible rates, like when you borrow $8 million, 1% is, I mean, that's $80,000 a year, so it does make sense on that. I say it again, we have every state in the nation uses this program. Examples, Sully County helped Ringneck Energy up there, an ethanol company. City of Pierre, we help Capillary Counseling serve 7 counties within the surrounding area from the variety of different disabled needs. Lincoln County, they do it for the 501c3. I believe Augustana went through Lincoln County. If we wanted to do something with Mount Marty, if they wanted to borrow, they could come here and use you as a conduit as well. Brown County did Presentation County. City of Winter, Winter Regional Hospital, Spink County, Eastern Star Nursing Home. And so where we end up with it today is, like I said, you're not the borrower. You're just a conduit. You're a partner in this, a progressive partner. I think that shows you're open to industry that comes in with examples like here today. So we're showing you what Dakota Protein is all about. We'll disclose, what you guys want to see on this TEFRA hearing. We're not here to hide anything. We're here to pay the full property tax. Because the interest is tax exempt, nothing else is tax exempt. If we buy something, we're paying sales tax. If we build a building, we're paying property tax. There is no special treatment to Dakota Protein at all in any way, and I can only stress that you're nothing more than a partner. We appreciate the partnership and look forward to a strong partnership. And Mr. Chairman, I know you've allocated so many minutes. I went through it pretty quick. I'll gladly take questions. You give me direction of how you'd like to go.
We're going to open up the floor at a point in time for public questions and comments.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, I'll open up some comments for the commissioners. Mr. Morris, maybe
Yeah.
that might help
You bet.
the audience with some questions. So I'll open up for the
What's
commission.
the primary end user of your product?
It could be feedlots. It could be
I mean, is it cattle,
cattle.
hogs?
Cattle. The cattle specifically, because it's a diameter of the cube that's made. As other presses come on board and extruded in a smaller diameter, then those markets will open up. But right now, the primary market is cattle.
So these bonds are bought by someone, is that correct?
These bonds are actually placed with a bank that we have lined up with credit approval, so it's considered a private placement.
So you don't have investors who are buying these bonds?
No, it's a lender. So the guarantees are between the lender and Dakota Protein, and the personal guarantees and the collateral.
Then tax-free income goes to the buyer.
Would go to the bank,
And that's the only place where there's,
The only place.
taxes are
Correct.
exempt.
because we qualify.
Correct.
Is the tenure of the bond set up between you guys and Dakota Protein? Is that based on the value of the bond? How does that?
You know, the word bond, I see why they use it, but really, I think if you just call it a loan, it goes back to the archaicness of the IRS that we have to call it a bond. It's not the general obligation that you're used to hearing from a school or a county. It'll be a 20-year amortization with the loan. It'll be essentially a commercial loan that at the end of the day, they take that coupon, and when they submit their taxes to the federal government, they'll say our 4.5% interest rate that we're paying does not qualify for income on their side. If it qualified for income on their side, they would charge us probably 5.5%, 6%. So we get that differential. They receive the benefit because they take that coupon and cash it in with the IRS.
When do you anticipate starting construction, should you get approval of this?
We would like to start within the next couple months. We're still in the final designs of the building. We have the equipment to order, but we really see it definitely this year.
It states here that you're going to have about 10 or 12 employees, probably pay about $18.50 an hour. Shift work, is that weekends, holidays, nights?
Ideally, you'd like to run 24 hours in manufacturing. In 2018, you can probably only run 2, maybe 2.5 shifts. The labor market here is very tight, which is good for the economy. So we know we're going to have to pay more to run those extra shifts.
So $18.50 is your top dollar, is that what you're going to pay?
I'd say bottom.
Bottom. What can they look forward to for a job?
They can look.
$5, $30, $40 an hour?
I would say it depends on the skills that we have. If you're going to be an operator, a true machine operator, maybe you might be on maintenance, maybe you might be on the floor. We know you can't hire anybody here less than $18, $20 an hour, so that's a start.
Yeah, because we've got truck drivers on the county for $22 an hour.
Exactly.
20 years ago, I was working shift work. I worked 2 decades or more. I was making more money in 1999 than what you're starting out with. So I'm kind of concerned if where you're going to get a workforce to work for that wage.
And that's a great point. It's obviously the risk that we take on, because if you stick 15 million in, if it's 18, if it's 20, if it's 22, that's just where our initial projections are to come in to see what kind of quality we're going to have. But I can tell you over time, and if you're going to put that money in, you have to pay your people, pure and simple. So between the benefit package, between a vacation, the sick leave, the environment.
Do you have companies lined up to buy this product from you?
Our first year production is completely sold. There's that big of a demand because of the higher protein, the less than 1% fine that's in it. There's a huge market in California for the dairy. There's a huge market in Texas. You know, unfortunately for them, the best thing for us is a drought, because then there's no hay or grass to be fed, so then they would buy the pellet.
So Toby, going back to the bond here we're talking about today. I'm familiar with bonds. Is this bond going to be insured? In other words, if there was default, there's insurance in place to take off that risk?
No, not on that, because the debt is between Dakota Protein and the bank. So you're going to have personal guarantees. You have an equity requirement that goes into it, plus you have the mortgage on the building and the equipment, typical from a commercial loan.
And you already secured financing, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Or Dakota
Yep,
Protein
we've
has.
secured it all.
Now, you talked about the TEFRA requirement.
Mhm.
This is federal law. This is IRS law we're talking
Correct.
about here. We're not talking about county ordinances. We're not talking about state statute. We're talking about federal regulation.
Correct.
And in my research of these types of bonds, these have been around since World War II.
They date back way back when,
Yeah.
yes.
So-
To spark the economy for manufacturing. It was an incentive for manufacturing, and a lot more anymore to keep it onshore versus offshore.
this bond be a rated bond, or are you gonna look at rating the bond, or would it be an unrated bond?
No. I know where you're going on everything on public finance. It's really a commercial loan.
Okay.
So the personal guarantees, the blood signature of the kids, the grandkids, everything's pledged.
So there really is no transfer of money,
Zero.
zero transfer of money.
Yep.
It's a paperwork drill.
It's jumping through hoops, which will also state there will be no cost to the county. We take care of everything on our end from the professionals that are hired. So, you know, and if there is a cost, gladly offset it. We expect some administration time, we'll gladly pay. You know, it's a partnership in economic development is what it is. It's one of the most underutilized, powerful tools that we have in the state. It is really what it comes down to. And we don't have a lot of tools in this state.
You'd be the on-site manager then?
No.
Working right here?
No, I stick to the office and Excel spreadsheets. I'm the last person you want in a manufacturing facility.
So then, I'm gonna ask you a question, you ever work shift work?
Have I?
Yeah.
Well, I grew up on a ranch, if that counts in Harding County.
Shift work, where you work, you go to work midnight, Saturday night, work through the weekend, work holidays, do you ever work a job like that?
I worked in Deadwood at a hotel.
But that's not outside. I'm just curious, because I'm just curious about these employees that, you know, we have a good workforce here, but I just feel that you're gonna pay them a little more than $18.50 an hour to work nights, weekends, holidays, you know, outside the weather. So I'm concerned about that. I'm worried that you aren't gonna be able to fill those slots.
We'll
That
have,
low of a wage.
we'll have no choice to fill them. That is just an estimated start. Until you get into it. If it's 20, if it's 22, you can look at my track record with companies I've represented around the state, and they've always been solid
Like I said,
employers.
I was making that kind of money 20 years ago in Yankton County, working shift work. So I'm just concerned about the employees.
Duly noted.
Thank you.
Toby, now, with the process going through here, would there be any financial reward for the county? Besides the jobs, besides property taxes, that would come to the county, but I'm talking about just on this type of private activity bond. Would the county receive any type of a fee?
We could discuss it, I guess. I wouldn't say no. It's not the intent to ever cost you money. It's the intent to work with it as a partnership.
Will we make any money on, will we get any fee?
Will you get
County-
any
yeah,
fees?
Would the county get a fee on this?
We could easily discuss that. I mean, I'm not saying no, I just don't know what you maybe
It's
have.
a possibility.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I guess we're always looking for more revenue in the
I
county.
fully understand.
Other questions for Toby from the commission?
So you bought the land?
It's under option.
The environmental aspect of it, I had the opportunity to ride down to Ord and tour that plant with several people from the Yankton community, and extremely clean plant. It was in full operation at the time we were there. No smell or odor any place around the plant. Seemed like I don't know what they paid their people. It seemed like they had responsible employees around the place doing their work.
Great plant, isn't it?
Yeah, well,
Very efficient.
this one is better.
It will be. We took all the scar tissue from there and learned from the mistakes and applied it here. And that's where you'll see higher ceilings.
It's also interesting to note that the DEEs, after they go through this process, are still a usable byproduct for animal feed.
All natural.
Any other questions at this time from the commission? Before I open up to public comment, I will allow the commission again if there's more questions that arise from the public comment, but anything at this point in time from the commission? All right, at this time, I'm going to open up for public comment. If you'd like to ask questions of Mr. Morris or the commission, please approach the podium, state your name.
Hi, Joe Healy. It's probably not for Toby, more for the commission, I guess. With the TID out at Napa Junction, can you explain how this company fits in, and then what that would do for that
Well,
TIF TID?
In general, and Toby has TIDs mastered before anything anybody else, but I'm gonna give it my interpretation, and Toby needs to help me out. I appreciate the help. With the TID, this plant's gonna be located in the district, tax increment district. And how my understanding of the tax increment district works is the property taxes paid in that district go to pay off the TID. The TID is a loan. So the more businesses you get out and they're paying property taxes, the faster that TID gets paid off. And once that TID is paid off, that property tax revenue comes into Yankton County for our budget.
Right.
Did I hit it right, Toby? Okay.
And I guess I understand that specifically to that one, I was gonna look it up and I didn't have time, but the terms on that TID there, is there a dollar amount, or is that a 20-year figure? Or
It's about $7 million, I believe, is what the loan is. Six?
Six.
Thank you, Toby.
Because I think it says that $6 million for the road agreement has to be paid within 7 to 10 years, but then the TID amount has 20 years on it. And I didn't see an amount under that in that.
10-year payment plan with a 20-year amortization, am I correct on that?
Yeah.
Go ahead, please. You know the ins and outs of these a lot better than I do.
When the TID was put in place, the money there was used to offset that road. And when we went through all the discussions of the road, the 6 or 8 inch concrete and so forth, that came out to about $6 million. So the agreement that was made was the state of South Dakota lent on that TIF $6 million at 1%. So what's really nice there is we're paying all principal back. And if there's ever a shortfall in that, Dakota Plains pays that back. So the county, once again, is not liable. And so as over time, the park is doing what we said it was going to do. It was to attract businesses to come in. You got a world-class infrastructure out there. And the intent now is to get that TIF paid off as quick as possible. But we only do that with more businesses. But once again, the county's never liable in that part. Does that help?
Yeah, I guess where I'm unclear is the two different payment schedules, the 7 to 10 year payoff and then the 20-year TID.
Oh, okay. So the state, they said, we're going to help you out at the beginning years because that's when it takes the longest to get businesses to come in. And so they lent the money to 10 years with a 20-year amortization.
Okay.
But Dakota Plains still has to come in at the end of that 10 years and take that out. They still get the TIF money up until that last payment is made. And with this company and future companies, it should be much lower.
Right.
It can never exceed 20, but we're probably thinking 15 years right now with what is coming in.
So out of your Napa Junction or Dakota Plains, out of their pocket, they'll ensure it's paid in 10, but
They do.
whatever they've had to pay out of their pocket gets back to them throughout the 20 years, essentially.
For the reimbursement on the back end, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I
it's-
just wanted that, I guess, clarified, so.
Okay.
Thanks.
Oh, great question. It's been a few years since I spoke about that.
Matt Winsan, Dakota Plains. Just for some clarification, the road cost was 6.3 million. I wrote the check for the extra 300,000, so I just want to make sure that's clear too. And we're responsible for that road, and we always have been. I get up to stand up here today to say, like Toby just said, this is what we intended. We intended to attract businesses. We got a world-class park. We got access to rail that. There's only one other railroad, the MRC line, Mitchell to Rapid City line, that's got some of the same things that we have. We're just in a better spot because all that development has been all way west. So they got a spread differential in freight and all that fun stuff. So I just came here today to say this project is not a Dakota Plains project. I like that they use Dakota Protein. I mean, that's always nice to keep the names the same. But we're excited. I mean, this is an opportunity for us to see more growth out there. we're still in talks with other companies for additional growth. So I hope this revenue bond is something that the county can do that might spur some additional business out there. So people can see that there's other options, other options at the state and local levels can do to do development out there. So I appreciate this. We're selling some land, which is good. It's an expensive land, so that's nice to get that debt off my balance sheet, and we're excited to see this happen. So, and we love to have tours out there. As this gets built, just stop in our office, and that's the neat thing about what we did out there. We built an office that this company will be able to use it as an incubating office, so they have access to, you know, not a work trailer, but they have an office that they can start their business out today. So I just want to thank the commission and look forward to seeing this one done too. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Hi, I'm Dan Speck from representing Yankton Area Progressive Growth. We have not been involved with this project. We were made aware of it early on, probably late fall or late spring, early summer. So we knew about the project, but we have not been involved with it. And Yankton Area Progressive Growth has always been excited about new business coming in town or expansion of existing businesses. We'd like to see the commission support this company, use all the tools that are in the toolbox, help Napa Junction grow, get that TIF paid off, and so that money can start rolling into the county. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Patty Davies. I live out in the Vollen area. And my question is this Dakota Protein moving into the Napa area, therefore they get the privileges of the TIF? Or is this a new company that's going to be built that is going to be paying property taxes and everything from square one? And secondly, I thought that Ralph Marquardt and Company had a pellet concern out in the Lesterville area. And if so, how is this going to stay his business from growing? Thank you.
So let's go back to your first question. Your first question was?
Is Dakota Protein eligible for the TIF right off the bat because they're going to build out in the Napa Junction area?
So let's just clarify the difference in terms.
Okay.
A TIF is a loan, tax or increment financing. A TID is a district for that financing. So out in the Napa Junction Industrial Park is a bunch of acres, 280 maybe, I can't remember the exact number, 190, okay. The land in that district is part of the financing, the TIF. So whatever property tax is paid in that district goes to pay on that loan. So the more businesses that are in that district, their property taxes will pay off that loan sooner. And once that loan is paid off with their property taxes, that money will come into the county budget. That property is still, county still receives property taxes on that land at the same rate as it was before it went into the tax increment district. So we're still receiving property taxes off of that property, but the expansion or the improvement of that property, that money is going to pay off the loan. Does that answer that question?
So after the loan is paid, then the county will get more funds?
Yes.
But until it's paid off, we don't?
Correct. We have lots of TIFs that have been implemented in the Yankton area, one being Fox Run where Walmart is at, one where Morgan Square is at. These are just another tool to help with development.
Considering our financial circumstances, it feels like the real short end of a stick.
Actually not. It's just the opposite.
Okay.
We're not losing a penny in taxes. We get the same amount as we would.
Okay. So then on to my second question. What happens out in the Lesterville area with that business that's already out there?
Can I answer that?
Yeah.
Patty, I have no idea what Ralph Marquardt is doing in the Lesterville
Okay.
Nor is it any of my business. If somebody comes in and wants to put a convenience store in the north end of 81, at the north end of town, it's not my business, that's his business.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments? For, against, questions? Please approach. One more call for public comment before we'll close comment. Joe? Joe wants seconds.
I didn't say enough.
That's all
No,
right.
I guess Patty, I think what she's getting at is there any direct competition with your pelleting plant? Any existing,
Well, I would answer this. I think there's competition all over. And I don't think it's government's place to either promote or restrict competition. That should be up to purely capitalism, purely supply and demand, and that is up to the business owner if they want to take that risk to invest it.
right? Well, I think that, I just wanted to clarify, I think that's what we're getting at is if helping this pellet mill is gonna hurt an existing pellet mill in Yankton County. And is that what you were getting or asking? Okay.
Thank you. Did I answer that question for you? Okay. My belief is that if a business decides they want to build, it's up to their decision if they want to compete with what's already in the area. So,
It's also the right to apply for any program or opportunity to reduce their costs that are available. They're within the scope of the law. They're not doing anything different.
correct. Any other public comments in regards to this?
Robert Frang. I've lived here all my life, seen a lot of things going on. And this looks like a large business. We got the district out there, and it gets the increase in the property taxes and stuff is what pays for it. Is that correct? Is that?
You're saying pays for the road?
No, well, it pays for what's going on out there, the district, the TID district or whatever. Okay, so so the more businesses, the more taxes will be increased, the quicker that will get paid off, the quicker all the millions and millions of dollars that are gonna be taxed out there will come in to Yankton County. The difference, we will be getting that much quicker. Would that be correct?
That is correct.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Any other public comment?
Phil Taw from Gayville. Thanks, Mr. Morris, for your presentation. The only negative comments I've heard from anybody is just what's the money, what's the bond, where's it coming from, and all that stuff, where's it, all that, those money issues. And thanks for clarifying that. It sounds like a really good plan and a product, and we're not on the hook for anything. The taxpayer's not on the hook. You're not on the hook. You're on the hook. Okay. And we just have to pay some employees, which is a good thing. Thanks for using a waste product from the ethanol industry. They have their waste products, and we want to try and recycle those. Is there any waste product at all from your process? And what's the disposal of that, if there is any? Because I don't know. And what's your energy source? Is that infrastructure there using electricity, natural gas? What's going on, energy in versus energy out, kind of a deal on your business model for that plant?
Great questions. The waste, what's really unique about this product, you have a pound of DDGs that come in, you have a pound of cake that goes out.
Will you just explain what DDGs are?
DDGs, dried distiller grain, the byproduct of when the corn spit out the back end.
Thank you.
Thank you. So yes, so zero waste, all natural, very, very clean industry. I wish I could say we had natural gas out there, and I really hope to be back to you in the next year or two saying we're bringing natural gas, because that would really make that park explode. But with that park out there right now, when Dakota Plains went in, they offset a tremendous amount of the electrical hookup of what it would take because of what their demand is. So they had to overbuild the system, not only for themselves, but for future users. So we'll be using the electric, we'll be using the co-op, we're working with East River and Bono, BY. So we're working with them right now of getting the proper lines run and whenever the construction starts, so.
While you're here, talking,
Yes.
you brought up the word natural gas.
Yes.
We all heard at length about natural gas in Yankton County and how we were pretty much at capacity. With a business like this coming out there, would be at some point in time a user of natural gas. And then I'm sure Matt would like Dakota, would need natural gas?
This one does.
This one doesn't? But if you have more and more businesses out there, more and more demand in the area for natural gas, will that be a way to help the process or not?
Absolutely. I mean, you're talking 25, 35 million to run a pipeline in, that the only way the economics work is to spread it over a larger base. So I really believe in time, the next couple of years, more and more businesses will look at this. We're going to get one or two more to locate. And if we could get one big, large user, it could really be the catalyst to make something happen on natural gas.
So this is in regards to natural gas concern that we have, another piece of the puzzle to help maybe down the road.
It is, very much so.
Thank you, Toby.
Thank you.
Any other public comment, questions? Phil, 1 second,
Yeah,
too.
Phil Taw again. I wasn't meaning to pick on natural gas as an alternate source. I didn't mean to step on toes that way. But are you solar or wind? Are you looking at any kind of stuff like that?
No, not this.
Okay.
Just plug it right in.
Any other comments, questions at this point in time? Well, we'll say last call before we close public comments. All right, we'll close public comments at this time. Reopen it up for comments or questions from the commission, Mr. Morris. I do, before that happens, Toby, we did receive two letters we'll enter into the record, one from Mr. Randy Gleick and one from Mr. Gary Moore. Patty, make sure all the commissioners have copies of those. And let everyone know too, we're not going to be making a decision today. We're going to look at the information and have that at a future meeting, a decision at this point in time. But is there any more questions or comments from the commission in regards to the presentation to us today?
I've got one more question. You know, this process goes in, goes out the same amount. Is it similar to like the alfalfa that's turned into pellets? That they used to do that? Is it a similar process?
There's a lot more breakage, a lot more water solubility with the alfalfa process. This is a very condensed product. I'm not familiar with that technology. I know it's,
You still heat it up and?
Ours we do.
Is that what you do?
I believe the alfalfa, and you know, before I even go down there, I'm not even one that qualified to say anything about alfalfa. I can just speak on ours, I'm sorry. But the only alfalfa pellet I'm familiar with is when I go elk hunting and I have carrying 50-pound
You
bags.
come from Sioux Falls, there's a couple of plants.
Yeah.
You know, that went out of business years ago, that some of it became not feasible for them to operate, but they did it for a lot of years. They compressed it and sold it.
Very
in
inefficient.
bags. Yeah, yeah. Okay, I'm just curious.
Toby, I do have one more question if nobody else does from the commission. So this $300 million that's allocated to South Dakota, you said Ohio's got 1.1 billion with the
Correct.
B, and they have a waiting list.
Correct.
So this $300 million that is allocated to South Dakota from the federal government. So if it goes unused, does some other state be able to get that allocation, or is this 300 hours? But like, the way I understand it, doesn't sound like it's all getting used.
You have a carry forward process, so what you don't use last year, you carry forward to this year. Our biggest user is South Dakota Housing,
Okay.
is where they allocate it. you're going to see a demand on this more. With the Trump new tax bill and what they did on that, I think you're going to see more and more demand for this allocation. And I'm probably the only goofy one that figured it out so far, so you're...
Is this from the USDA, the allocation from USDA?
No, this is right out of the Treasury Department.
Okay.
So question, in that line of thought, is there anything else on the line that might use up the allocation prior to this if it's put off a week or two?
We are slated to use this year's. So we have received that, and I now have to start the process with GOED, so I have to close out by December. If not, I could apply for next year's, and I think last year we carried over 200 million, so.
About 300 million.
Was it 3? So yeah, so really they have 600 million allocation.
Any other questions from Mr. Morris at this time? Now, if we put this on our next meeting agenda, will you be able to be here for questions, if we have any more questions at that point?
Yeah, what you guys,
That'll be the 18th of September.
the 18th of September.
That would give us a few weeks to digest what we've heard.
Just so happens I'm in Yankton that day.
Good to hear. All right. Thank you, Toby.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're still in discussion.
We can still have a discussion yet. Haven't moved on.
Okay. My opinion is as difficult as it is to attract economic development in this very, very competitive time, we have to be progressive and move towards improving the system that comes out. And we're very comfortable that it is legitimate and the risk to the county is very minimal. We had done a lot of pre-work on this. I have seen nothing new come out from what was available to me in the last week and a half, so I just think it needs to move on.
Any other comments at this time?
I'd just like to say that I'm for progressive growth too, and I like to see companies come to Yankton County. But I wonder about this $18.50 an hour, when McDonald's were paying $15 to sling hamburgers. So I guess I'd like to see his wages come up a little bit. You know, I understand it's hard to start a business, but you're gonna have a hard time finding shift workers for $3.50 an hour more than McDonald's pays. So.
Gary, I don't think we have a place to demand a wage.
No,
But if you look at the, but in the packet, there's 10 to 12 employees with an annual salary of about $500,000, so,
Shift work.
and I guess that's up to business to decide on what's fair compensation. Government, I don't feel needs to or mandate a wage.
I agree.
Any other comments at this time? Don, I respect your comment in regards to moving with this, but I think with a lot of information being in front of us today, I think it'd be prudent to wait 2 weeks. But I do agree with you in the nature of an opportunity and seizing it when it comes in front of us.
Concur.
Any other comments or questions from the commission? Okay. All right, next on the agenda, Brian and Clark Engineering. Give us a little update on Fleegs. We got some new information on Johnson over the weekend, Johnson's Bridge. Thanks, Toby. Thanks, Adam. And are we going to talk about Fleeks first or Johnson?
Yes, we will.
Fleeks.
Adam Polly, Clark Engineering. The packet I just handed you guys is for the Johnson Bridge. We'll talk about Fleegs Bridge first.
And will you pull the mic up a little bit, just so it's kind of quiet in the audience? I don't know if everybody can hear the audience in the background.
So we're done with the analysis on Fleegs Bridge after our field inspection and getting that back to our load rater. We were able to increase the weight limit to a single unit 24 tons and a combination of 33 tons. So we're in between what it was posted last year and what it was just downgraded to this year.
Could you see those weights again, please?
Single unit 24 ton and the combination 33 ton.
And then remind us again what it got lowered to. Was it at 19 single?
Single unit was 19 and the combination was 25. The reason, so I talked about finding some cracked welds. After talking with the load rating specialist, they were not I don't want to say an important one, but they were less important welds.
And we're still talking about Fleegs.
We're
right?
still talking about Fleegs.
All right. So, after the last inspection, you were able to increase the load limit after it was decreased 2 weeks ago, correct?
Correct.
And we're now at 24 tons, a single, and 33 tons combination. That's total, not per axle, that's a total vehicle weight.
That's
Gross
total.
vehicle weight.
Yes, sir.
What would it take on that bridge? Could there be some repairs on that bridge done to make it a bridge that handles more weight?
There could be rehab, not repairs, but rehab to the bridge. We could add cover plates to the bottom of the girders to strengthen them, to be able to carry more weight.
And for the rehab grant, like you talked about last meeting, we could apply for the bridge improvement grant, but that won't happen until 2019, or is it 2020? Remind me, if we were fortunate enough to be awarded a big grant for Fleegs Bridge, when is the earliest that we could do some repairs on that bridge with a big grant?
The earliest that you could do the actual construction for would be 2020. The grant application itself is due to the state DOT January 2nd of 19. They awarded, I think it was April when they awarded this year's. And then we gotta go through all the paperwork and do all the design work, and it would be bid for construction in 2020.
Are there any other avenues that can be taken to get repair work done on that bridge so that we can get tonnage back up on it?
The only other one would to pay for it 100% county funds, and we could probably do the construction of that next year.
What are you looking at a cost for that?
I'm not sure.
Too early to tell?
Too early.
So if we wanted to pay for it 100% out of pocket, we could do it as quickly as we got estimates and could have to find the money for.
Right. We could do the design work this winter, bid it early or late winter, early spring for construction next year.
Didn't you say last meeting that we had some ongoing big funds from this year that we could apply towards that?
That is for the 3 other Jim River bridges,
But we,
not for Fleegs.
I understand. Haven't we done the repairs on the other bridges? Oh, you're talking about, oh, excuse me.
We're on the Fleegs Bridge
Oh, I
yet.
thought,
Yep, no, we're still on the Fleegs Bridge.
all right.
So,
So if you do these repairs that we're talking about now, and the bridge has to be replaced in 3 to 5 years, which has been the question that's been in front of the county for many years, Is it a waste of funds, or should we just be going right to a new bridge?
That is a good question for you guys.
I guess that's where we lean on you in regards to recommendations.
I-
When you make the recommendations on what we could do to beef up, so to speak, the load,
Without any numbers to base this off of, I would,
How much does it cost us to get those numbers?
I don't even know that. I mean, are you asking us to design the project so we know how much it's gonna cost? Ballpark 30 to 40,000
Well, that's not much.
for us to design it, and then,
10-foot bridge.
well, this is for the rehab of it though.
But you said that's just design.
That's just design work
of the rehab.
Just these-
of the rehab.
Design of the rehab, not of the replacement, of the rehab.
If we do the design work for 30 to 40, I'm just ballparking here.
And this is
Then-
the Fleet Bridge.
This is for Fleets Bridge. If we do the design work, then we would know what needs to be done, and we could do a cost estimate for what needs to be done. And at that time, we can make the recommendation if it's economically feasible to do this rehab work, or if we should just think about a total replacement.
From what you've seen of the bridge, if we rehab it, would it last another 10, 15 years?
Yes, I believe so.
The current bridge?
The current
Is
bridge.
solid enough that to rehab?
The substructure, so the actual concrete piers and abutments that the girders sit on, are in relatively good condition for the age of the bridge.
The day that you inspected the Fleet Bridge, did you find anything wrong with it?
Just cracked welds they're minor welds. They're not structural welds.
Anything else? Nothing? Nothing wrong with the Fleet Bridge?
Biggest thing you told us last meeting was the bridge is handling the loads it was designed for back in the 1950s, whenever it was built. But now with equipment getting bigger and bigger. Remember your demonstration was a paperclip, was that right?
Right. And this bridge has the same type of welds that we're going to see on this Johnson Bridge. So we could have problems down the road even if we let legal loads go across this.
The day that you inspected the Fleet Bridge, I was there. You were down underneath on your neat little inspection ladder. I took a picture of this log jam that day. What's that going to do to the pressure on that bridge with that log jam? And is that log jam still there today?
It was there when I was there.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know.
I took the picture
I'm sure
that
it's
you
still.
inspected the bridge.
I'm sure it's still there.
Because I and two other individuals were there. Yeah.
It's-
What will that do to that bridge if that keeps building up?
It's not good for the bridge.
Yeah.
Obviously.
I guess when I asked you if there was anything else that you noticed, I was just curious. But so you don't think that?
There's nothing structurally wrong
Yeah.
with the bridge.
Okay, but what will this do to it if it gets worse or in its present state?
Like you said, it will add more pressure to the substructure,
I'm not the engineer. You're the expert.
and it will cause water to back up
Yeah.
on high flow events.
If you were to rehab that bridge, would that only bring it back up to the 80,000, or would it exceed the 80,000 since we got plates licensed up to 86? What would be the capacity on a rehab on that bridge?
If we were to rehab it, we would rehab it to remove the weight limit sign, which would be, the trucks would be able to carry legal South Dakota loads.
With added access? It would not, even before it was dropped numbers, it was a 40-ton bridge. If you rehab it, would it be above that?
Yes, we would totally remove the weight limit sign
On a rehab?
on the rehab.
Other questions for Adam in regards to the Fleets Bridge? I know I see a few business owners out there. I don't know if you had any questions for him as well in regards to the load limits and stuff. I know it puts a bind on some of the farmers and elevators that need that road to haul, but any questions that you have, you'd like to ask of Adam?
I guess those cracks you had, why did you
Lauren,
go back
will you come up more? And just state your name for the record, too.
Lauren Hawk. I guess my question is you said you just found some stress cracks that weren't as bad as what you thought it was. Why can't it go back to 40 ton till we rehab it?
Thank you.
Good question. So, as I stated last time, I believe, the last load rating that was done on this bridge was using an acceptable load rating procedure, but not the preferred method from the federal highway. We are using the preferred method from the federal highway, which is a little bit more conservative.
So these standards are set by the Federal Highway Traffic Administration, or did I say the right?
Federal Highway Administration,
Federal Highway
FHWA.
Administration. But it can't go up to the previous.
Not using the preferred method.
But you said you're gonna up it back to 33 ton, correct?
Correct?
That means you're gonna have 2 trucks on there, that'd be 66,000. Can we still do a single truck at a time at 40?
Not without closing the bridge down to 1 lane.
How would, if you were to do that, how would you enforce that?
I mean,
Jersey barriers, concrete barriers, I guess, and that adds more weight to the bridge. From my understanding is, when the federal highway gives these accounts out, now this is coming from the DOT with a conversation I had late last week, much like the situation we have on the Johnson Bridge, we kept that at 1 lane and posted that at 5 ton, but how do you know they're doing, or, you know, we're trying to prevent even the possibility of extra weight being out there. That's why we took the extra precaution to make sure that it wouldn't happen by closing it down to 1 lane. You know, and the fact being is it's a 475-foot bridge. They look at this a little different than they would, say, a 20-foot bridge. There's just that much more area that you could have the possibility of 2 of those type of vehicles meeting on that bridge.
The last time I asked you about the single truck, and you said, how would you enforce that? And anyway, there's a guy with a badge right there. I think if you send a few of those guys out there and gave out some tickets, news travels real fast in Yankton County.
I think the only way you can enforce it is if you'd have 24 hours law enforcement presence on it.
I agree.
And we got speeding, we have speed limits, we have DUI laws, we have drug laws. Doesn't matter how many law enforcement are out there, there's still people gonna violate the law. So,
Maybe a single lane.
going back to the single lane aspect, is that single vehicle at Ray S, is that even a possibility?
So I don't want to, we shouldn't get caught up in the whole 33, if the way load rating works is we take the possibility of 2 trucks meeting on the bridge at the same time. That doesn't mean the bridge will be able to take 2 33 tons meeting continuously all the time. We take that possibility with the factor of safety that we don't damage the bridge. So just taking it down to 1 lane is not saying that we can have 66 tons on that 1 truck, if that makes sense.
I got a question for you. If you talk about 2
Did
trucks
I
meeting each other.
did I answer? Kind of.
I understand. Ray, does that answer your question?
I'm just trying to figure out a way to help out through harvest. And if that would be possible.
But we take on the liability And we don't have a choice when we get these bridge inspection recommendations from the DOT standpoint. We'd be susceptible to losing any future grant funding. And as Doug put it earlier, Doug Kinneberg, it's not really an option for a county to decide what happens on their bridge as far as postings go. It's the law.
Can I ask my question now? You talked about two trucks meeting each other. How about one truck right behind the other one, and a school bus comes along and the bridge collapses? What's gonna happen then?
I think that's why Mr. Paul is here telling us the recommendation on the weight limit on the bridge, taking in all the factors of the information.
There's a lot of technical aspects of this, and I'm trying to filter it from our load rating specialist down to you guys.
So even if it was a single lane, you couldn't put a 40-ton on there?
Correct.
But it would still only be rated for 33?
So part of complying with the federal standards, this will make that bridge eligible for the DOT Bridge Improvement Grant. Unfortunately, the process just takes time for us to offset some of our dollars, or the county could fund it 100% on her own, on the rehab,
Correct.
or on the replacement, either way.
Correct.
You
Just-
said the total cost of the rehab is $40,000
For design.
Just
for the design.
For design.
of the rehab,
Of the rehab.
not of the replacement.
Not of the replacement.
So how much is the actual work?
Wouldn't know until the design's done.
Well, you can guess whether it's $1 million or $2 million or $5 million.
How about this? What's it cost us for the rehab grant on the bridges that we have going on right now? Granted, we're not talking about cookie cutters here. These are all separate bridges, separate designs. But what's our costs on Johnson Bridge? I know you're gonna talk more about that here in a minute anyway, but what's the total cost?
So I know the total cost for all three bridges put together that we have a project for is just over $600,000.
Was originally bid.
Wasn't it about, then we awarded a grant from, the big grant was for those three bridges, about 880,000 total.
Correct.
And then we came under budget, correct?
Yep.
So you divide that by 3, you're looking at $200,000 to $300,000 for rehab.
That was for preservation.
Oh, that's preservation, that's not even rehab.
Yeah, it's not apples to
So we're
apples.
not even, yeah. So we're looking at 6 figures, if not 7.
Yes. I don't think you'll get to the 7, but it'll definitely be somewhere in the 6 figures to do the rehab.
And if we got the bridge improvement grant, our portion would be 20%, and the state would kick in 80%, if we were successful.
Yes, sir.
Awarded.
The day that you inspected the Fleet Bridge, how long did it take? How many hours?
2
2 hours?
for the 1/2. It was more like a third. So the snooper truck, our basket can only reach so far under the bridge. I think we can see about 2/3 from one side, that we have to go to the other side and get the other third. So the day I was out there was the other half. It went quicker. We didn't have as much to look at. Usually takes anywhere from 4 to 6 hours, depending on how much we have to look at, how bad the bridge is to do a.
You were out there
So it
2
took you
different days,
6
correct?
hours in total?
Yes.
In regards to the Fleets Bridge, do we have any more questions or comments for Adam? We're here kind of beating up the messenger a little bit. It's not, and we appreciate your hard work and effort on this and getting us information. This is something that's not new to us. We've all known this bridge has been, that's why it's on an annual inspection. Hopefully we can find solutions to get this bridge back to where we want it to be at a financially responsible way. Yep.
Actually, I have 2 questions. At last meeting, you, Joe Healy, last meeting you alluded to nothing really has changed structurally in this bridge as far as deterioration since, say, last inspection. It's just most of the way it's rated has changed. Can you explain that a little bit? I mean, was it the methodology of inspection is more precise, or the, say, the standard has changed? Sure. That's first one.
So, that's right, nothing structurally changed on the bridge. And it had nothing to do with the methodology of inspection. It was the methodology of the load rating. The previous load rating used the old load rating, which is acceptable. We are using the preferred load rating from the federal highway.
What's the difference between those two?
The old load rating is
Using the bridge chart and
is inconsistent. The preferred methodology is more consistent.
what's the difference between the rate, I mean, the load ratings? Is it, what makes this one inconsistent in this way? I mean, is it that the old way used the bridge chart and the new way just says no matter how many axles or your axle spacing or anything, we're saying?
So,
I mean, what exactly is different?
I'm going to try to answer this. The old load rating methodology, I was talking about when we were thinking about closing down to 1 lane. It's the load rating takes in the possibility of more than 1 truck being on the bridge at a time. That possibility analysis is more concise with the preferred method.
But what I understand you saying, if we don't do it the way you're suggesting, the feds won't consider us for grants or any other funding. Is that right?
Correct.
So they've got the big hammer. It's not a matter of
And
catching them.
I mean, I understand the concerns with this, and I mean, there's a lot of, the load rating manual that we use is 6, 8 inches thick, and there's a lot of stuff that goes into this. It's just 2 different methodologies. The old methodology was for when the bridge was built. It's just like they were using an older methodology when it was built. It was up to the current standards in the 1950s. Now we're in the 2000s. We have more knowledge, more experience, and we have a more refined load rating and a more refined bridge design process.
So would you say that this methodology is the most current form of rating system on this?
It is.
And the previous methodology was that, do I understand you correctly, was dated back to when essentially the bridge was built?
Yes. Still acceptable, just outdated.
But did the federal law change? Is that why we're changing this methodology or anything from the feds change?
No.
Other than the posting on the bridge itself and having to account for additional axles and that.
Yeah, that was changed 2014 or something.
Don, to answer your question, if it's still the acceptable method, would it disqualify us from the grant if we did not change it?
No.
Say that again.
If we went back to the acceptable load rating method, that is not the current, but is still acceptable, and we came up with a new tonnage or a different tonnage, you would still be meeting all the criteria from the federal highways and still be eligible for all the fundings.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, that didn't come out the same way.
He's talked about it being not possible to enforce it, and I suggested law enforcement. How about if we put a stoplight in there? That'll make it one-way bridge. Put a stoplight on each side.
But we're getting back to, what does that get us?
Is that gonna mess up your free grant money if we put a stoplight on it?
No. It won't have no effect on
That's
the
my
grant money.
suggestion then.
But
Keep
getting back
law
to,
enforcement out there 24/7, but you can keep a stoplight out there.
if we restrict it to one lane, it does not mean you double the weight limit.
I guess that was my second question is that, I understand if we restrict it to one lane, it may not double it, but did you run that number with a single truck through your you have a weight limit office or whoever, have they run those numbers and given a recommendation of what that maximum weight, because even if you went down to a single truck, there's a possibility you can have
Are you saying pretty much meet in the middle a little bit? Increase the single truck weight up?
right, increase it to, you could probably even go over 80,000 if you did a single, and keep it single lane through harvest, and then let's work together and try to come up with some sort of a compromise here, I mean, we gotta try, I know you don't wanna get, you have liability issues and whatnot, but if you run that analysis, what would that number be for a single truck? And I think we need to know that and be able to make a decision based off that.
So
That's,
what I think you're asking is, can we run a load rating considering only one lane? Yes, we can. Did we? No. But we could. And it will not double it, but it will increase.
And the problem with red and green lights is obviously 10 trucks can line up and go across one right behind another.
The more we try to bend the rules, the more liability comes upon us. I mean, if we try to restrict it to one lane, you're going to have more liability. Because you have to enforce that the one lane there's only going to be one lane.
it's just on that, and that's where I was saying, I don't want you to have that liability. I think if you could provide that number to the county, say, okay, single lane, maybe run two. First of all, the acceptable method, what is the tonnage for keeping it open? Second of all, if you went back to single lane, what would that tonnage be? And then I think it's up to the county to make that decision on what we want to do and what we enforce it. I mean, this wouldn't be the first bridge in Yankton County that's had single flow traffic in it. It can be done, especially if we look at two bridges from the east side of town to get any grain to the west side of town we need something open. But
I want to clarify, the liability that I'm talking about is not on the engineer.
It's on the county.
It's on the county. I wasn't talking about my liability.
So if
I'm
it
talking
would
about
fail-
your liability.
If it would fail, because we wouldn't take our engineer's posted recommendation, that'd be on the county's responsibility.
If we were to run it with a single lane, we would give you that tonnage and say this bridge needs to be a single lane. Liability is off of us now. Now it's on you to ensure that there's only a single lane of traffic moving on this bridge.
And we're not just talking about the liability to replace the bridge, we're talking about the liability
Of human
of
life.
human life.
Correct.
Any other questions for Adam in regards to the Fleegs Bridge?
So you will run that single lane then?
If that's something that you would like us to do, yes.
Can you run it and then bring it back to us in 2 weeks? Is that enough time? The 18th of September?
With the next topic, probably not.
Okay.
And I'm thinking the Johnson Bridge, if you have to detour around to go from east to west, could be a 6 or 8 mile detour. The Fleet Bridge is probably a 4 or 5 mile detour. Down to
It's
50.
Highway 50 and up to
Down to 50
448.
and back, it's 2 miles, 2.5 miles.
Get it set as soon as you can on the one vehicle. So, All right, moving on to Johnson Bridge, and I want to, for those of you who don't know, Brian had called me Saturday morning, late morning, and been working with DOT, with Clark Engineering on the holiday weekend, and they were out doing, I think they really worked really hard and did some stuff to get out there sooner to do inspections on this, and I'll let Brian and Adam kind of take it from there, but I appreciate the willingness to work hard on the holiday weekend and get this information out to us sooner.
So the packet I gave the commissioners, if you want to look at the pictures, this is the cracks that we encountered on doing with the snooper truck. You can see they're very long cracks. And the pictures that are up on the screen are after the paint was removed to do the non-destructive testing. You can't really see the cracks too well, but the pictures that you guys have, you can really see it.
The picture I see, it's pretty much that crack runs the whole line of the well, doesn't it?
Yep. Yep. The visual crack is almost full depth, the full height of the girder.
So these are, you talked about the Fleeks Bridge, about minor welds. These are not minor welds.
These are not minor welds.
So these are,
Very significant welds. I mean, if one of these welds breaks, the two pieces of girder come apart and you're in the drink.
hence the reason why it's been closed to truck traffic.
Correct. So those are the pictures I have given you. There's three girders that these cracked welds are on.
How many total girders are on that?
There's 4 total girders.
It's 3/4 of it.
So one of the cracks is on girder 1, which is the northernmost girder, in span 2, which is towards the west end of the girder. The other 2 are on girders 3 and 4, 2 adjacent girders on the south side of the bridge in span 4, which is towards the east end of the bridge. The 2 adjacent girders is what really bothers us. If you have just the 1 adjacent girder, hopefully some of that load will get transferred to the next girder, which doesn't have any visual cracks in the weld. When you have the 2 adjacent girders, you can't transfer that load from the one to the next because the next one is cracked also. So then you go back to having from 4 girders to only having 2 girders, half of your capacity. It's just a domino effect. Once one goes, it goes to the next one. If the next one has a defect, it'll go to the next one. Now you're down to 2. In the case where the 2 adjacent ones are.
So right now we have that bridge open up to car traffic only, right?
And posted at 5 ton.
5 ton.
And it's cut down to 1 lane.
Using my microphone.
And the bridge is also cut down to 1 lane.
1 lane at 5 ton. The inspection you guys did on Saturday, talk to us a little bit about the technology. I know Brian and you talked to me a little bit on the phone, but I want you to tell everybody about that technology.
So the first testing that we did is called magnetic particle testing. We see how much of the crack we cannot see visually. And then the picture up here, on the left side, you can see that little screen. That is ultrasonic testing. It's called the shear wave ultrasonic testing. It sends sound waves into it and back out, and it can determine how satisfactory the weld is. All 3 cracked welds failed using the ultrasonic testing, and that failed to today's standards. We also tested a weld that does not have any visual cracking. That weld failed today's standards as well. And now we're comparing apples to oranges again. Remember, this bridge was designed in the 50s using different standards. It's just like the bridge was load rated back in the or designed back in the 50s, it doesn't pass today's today's loads. Just because it failed today's standards doesn't mean it's going to collapse. We go off by these visual cracks. Once you start seeing the visual cracks, then we have problems. So don't hang too heavily on it failed today's standards. Today's standards are different than 1950.
So, before you give us recommendations, or can you even give us recommendations at this time?
Yeah, so the sheet that I handed the commissioners,
I'll turn the light back on.
it kind of goes through the steps here that we're taking. The first step is a crack investigation, which we did Saturday. The next step is a crack analysis. We'll go through and assess the load carrying capacity of the bridge. And we'll also do a fatigue evaluation of the welds using the most current manual for bridge evaluation. After that, we can determine a retrofit of the welds. And the option that is being discussed between us, the county, Brian, and the DOT is doing a bolted connection right over top of the weld. So we would ground the weld flat. We would take that backer plate off that's on the other side, make sure everything's flat, and we bolt the two pieces of girder together. I asked the DOT in my conference call, give me a price just off the top of your head. They said $50,000 per splice. We have 3 of them. We're at 150 about.
I'm not gonna hold you to that, but at least we have a ballpark figure.
Right.
And of that 150, this bridge still qualifies under the bridge improvement grant since it was found. And because of that bridge improvement grant, as we talked on Saturday, allowed you to go with a little bit more technical or evasive study or technique, correct?
This testing, the inspection that we did on Saturday was still covered in the bridge inspection scope. We are going to do an amendment for the extra trip and all the testing to your bridge inspection scope. Everything after that extra day on Saturday will go to the big grant on this bridge. So our retrofit design and the crack analysis, along with the actual construction of the bolted splice, will be covered under the big grant, which I believe ballpark we have $130,000 left on that bridge.
Okay.
And so with this fatigue evaluation, we approximate how much life we have left in the welds, and then we have to determine if it's economically feasible to do these retrofits to these splices, or if it's more economical to replace the structure.
My question is, how fast can you get recommendations to us?
So
Is it 2 weeks from today? Could it be done sooner?
if you look at the sheet there, we have the crack analysis taking place September 4th to the 11th, and the retrofit design from the 12th to the 19th. I'm sure we can have it done by the 18th, I hope.
The repair work?
No.
No, just the designing.
Because we'd have to do a change order on that.
Alright.
So if we get that to us this is the quickest, is by the 18th. Best case scenario, comes to us by the 18th. We got the cost, we understand that. The recommendation is going to be in our favor to do it. How fast can repairs be done to get that bridge back open for harvest?
That is, we can't tell right now. Depending on what our retrofit design is, we don't know how fast the contractor can do it because we don't know what repair they're going to be doing yet.
Are we going to have to bring in a special contractor, or the contractor on site are they able to?
The contractor on site has done before, has done one this year in Union County. So they are knowledgeable in this.
So we
there's,
don't have to worry about trying to find a different
Nope.
contractor.
Nope.
Which saves us time.
In your experience, you've seen repairs like this done before, correct?
I have not.
You have not.
I have not seen one like this. This is, I mean, we talked to the DOT before we came to the meeting. The DOT rarely sees this, let alone local entities like yourself. This is a very, very rare occasion, especially to have 3 of them on one bridge and for the cracks to be that long.
Hence the reason why the DOT and everything was going on a holiday weekend. Did you, Brian, you and I were talking, you said that DOT put a lot of urgency on moving this forward.
They did.
I just have 2 questions. When you grind that weld down and then re-weld it, do you take a piece of flat plate and put it over the top and reinforce it all the way around to strengthen the area that's had stress on it? Or is it just a single weld that you replace the cracked one with?
We don't know yet. We have to do the retrofit design.
Did you
Can
say?
you find out for me?
Did you say you're gonna do a bolt?
The-
A bolt
that-
recommendation?
That is the option that we have been discussing. That's what the contractor just did this year, was a bolted splice. They're more, I mean, we don't want to have to hope that the weld job, whoever welds it, is good. The bolted splices, they're just bolted. We don't have to worry about any welds. I'm not saying that's not an option, it's just not one we have been talking about.
I'd like to know if that's what's going to be done. And then my other question is, you said that the Johnson Bridge is limited to vehicle traffic and 5 tons, 1 lane. My question is, how do you enforce that?
That's a good question. We,
It's blocked off.
right now, we have it at no trucks because we had to. I think Brian has contacted the sheriff, the highway patrolman, the scales, everybody's on notice. If we do see a truck go across this, we are gonna have to take different measures to ensure this doesn't happen, whether that be closing the whole thing to ensure no trucks go across it, or an option that the DOT threw out there was to weave cones in a single lane across the bridge to hopefully deter the trucks because they can't make those turns. Once again, not
Have you got
foolproof.
cameras out there to see if it gets violated in the middle of the night?
Brian, didn't you talk to the DOT and signage wise, don't you get LED boards or something like that? I know you and I talked about.
I got this all approved through the DOT prior to even opening up the bridge. And it was their recommendation that we contact the Yankton area DOT and we placed a sign board up. And it was also their recommendation to post that bridge at 5 tons. And it was also their recommendation to keep that bridge at a single lane, and there is stop signs on either end. I'm going off of recommendations from the South Dakota Department of Transportation Local Government Assistance Office. And they work directly with Federal Highway, so I'm assuming they had conversations with them also, and this is all done in an aspect of safety. And I understand that there's a possibility out there, and like we mentioned, if we do see that it is being violated, we'll have to change our methodology.
So in other words, you just close it down altogether.
That's the safest way to ensure no trucks go across it is to close it completely.
Which
I mean, this is totally opposite of fleets. We're trying to restrict the weight limit on fleets to extend the life. This one is purely safety. We cannot have trucks on this, otherwise we may have a failure.
So disregarding the failure, I mean, accepting the fact that we could have a failure, is it possible that we put a sign out there that says $15,000 fine if you're caught breaking the rules and with our attorneys on?
That is a possibility.
Is the fine set by the county or is the fine set by the state?
The fine would be set by you. But you're
I think
hoping.
that number's low enough, Don.
I agree.
Thanks, Don, for bringing that up, because when I worked in Chicago, there's a sign out there. It says, you hit a highway worker, automatic 10 years in jail, and I think it was $30,000 fine minimum, but 10 years in jail mandatory. So maybe the sign will work.
Back to recommendations. Any questions, any more questions in regards to Johnson Bridge?
You started to say something about that opens something up in regards to the fine. What were you gonna say?
That opens.
Didn't you start to say something about in regards to the fine? Okay.
Well, I appreciate the extra effort on this. I mean, we got one bridge right now that has got a restricted weight load. And if I remember, as you said, once this rehab is all done with this bridge, or we do, well, what's the load limit would be on Johnson Bridge once it, I'm not gonna hold you, I mean, we're talking about if everything goes as planned. Will this take it off the load limits? No, so this one will still have a load limit on it, okay.
Correct. Excuse me.
So, next meeting, recommendations, and if need be, hopefully a change order, so we can expedite this as quickly as we possibly can.
That's our hope.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Chairman, we want to consider a vote on a potential funding. And with that, I like the idea of motion cameras.
Can we, I mean, it's on the agenda as Johnson Bridge. Can we do that, or do we have to have a special meeting?
I would.
I think safety's gonna trump everything here, isn't it?
Well, we got to make sure we do it legally, though.
Yeah, I would consult
We're
your
talking about putting a
attorney.
fine on Johnson Bridge if a truck would cross it. Over the-
I believe you have to have a resolution for this.
That's my point I'm getting to. We have to follow statute. Or we could have a special meeting in 2 days, 3 days, just in regards to the resolution. Unless-
I guess I'd recommend we have a special meeting. What I hear talking about is very serious. And, you know, the weather right now is moving the crops along. There's gonna be harvest in the county in 2 weeks.
So,
And a lot of farmers are moving their last year's grain.
I would say if we have a special meeting, we do it on Friday. Allows us tomorrow timeframe to talk with the state's attorney in regards to the formation of this resolution. We'd have to advertise, so if we did it, today's Tuesday, tomorrow's Wednesday, what's the latest we'd have to advertise this? So we can advertise it on Thursday. Okay. Well, if we had, if we had a special meeting, and we still have to talk with state attorney, a few other things, which commissioners could be here on Friday for a quorum?
I can be here on Friday.
We'll be here Friday.
Don? And you said you can't? Okay. Well, we'd have 4 commissioners here on Friday if we needed a special meeting. So Patty and I will talk with the state's attorney tomorrow, and so we can do a special resolution if need be. I just think we need to make sure I mean, this is very, very vital road. We need to protect it. We need to make sure that people understand that we're trying to protect it. Otherwise, we're talking about millions of dollars versus thousands of dollars. All right. We'll tentatively say on noon on Friday, and Patty and I will talk with Rob and check your emails, commissioners, by tomorrow at 5 p.m. we should have an idea. and we'll communicate one way or the other.
And it might not be necessary, the meeting.
Correct. We'll let Patty and I and Rob will talk tomorrow. Patty will send out correspondence by tomorrow at 5 PM what we found out and discovered. Or maybe Rob will, somebody will, but we'll make sure we'll communicate to the commissioners by tomorrow at 5 PM. Adam, I appreciate, and Brian, the hard work on this. I know it's, sometimes we're killing the messenger a little bit, but I appreciate the extra effort this weekend. Brian, you have one more thing on the agenda.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks, Adam.
Thanks, Adam.
Driveway app.
This is an entrance application for J Cuts. You have the floor. Anything special in regards to this entrance application?
Flat, wide open, don't see any safety issues, I guess, other than the bridge on 303.
This is through off.
That log jam on the roads, did you see that?
Gary, we're on the Cuts application right now.
Yeah.
After this, you can address that question. Any questions for Brian in regards to the Cuts entrance application?
Is there a culvert required?
Yeah.
No other questions?
If there's no other questions, Brian, I'd entertain a motion in regards to the entrance application for J Cuts.
Move to approve the application.
Is there a second?
Second.
Deb, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, Gary, did you have another question for Brian?
Yeah, the picture that I showed you of the log jam, have you seen that?
Mhm. Yep.
When did you become aware of it?
I was down there when they were doing the inspection, but in order to do any work in the river or any stream itself, we need to have a 404 permit to perform that work.
And that's from?
The Corps of Engineers.
Yeah, I know, because I was down there the day we did the inspection too.
But like I said, any work that is done in a stream or a water of the US, we need to have a Corps of Engineers 404 permit to remove anything or add anything to the river.
Can you get the ball rolling on that?
There again, I just found out about it, so we have several of those same other areas and other bridges too, so.
Any idea, have we done this before to replace, to move that cost-wise?
It's kind of a crapshoot because you don't really, how do you estimate, how do you move trees out of the river?
And it's not budgeted either,
Correct.
so we'd have to supplement the budget if we found something.
Major costs, yeah.
Any other questions for Brian?
Oh, your rainy day fund is 25,000, that's all depleted, I take it.
Getting close.
With all the culverts replaced and the washouts and stuff like that?
And like I said at the last meeting, more and more stuff as time is progressing and settling out, the more and more stuff is starting to show its face.
As the water recedes, you're talking about?
Water recedes and comes up and goes down again, and it's just been an abnormal year.
Any other questions for Brian?
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
At this time, I'd entertain a motion to go to Board of Adjustments.
So moved.
Second.
I'm gonna go with Ray with the first, Gary with the second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We're in Board of Adjustments. The first item on the agenda, variance and conditional use permit for Jason Jan. Pat, what do you want to start with, the variance first or the conditional use?
Variance first.
Okay,
So Jason Yankton, we are doing a variance minimum lot requirement. It's in an ag district. He's right outside Irene on South Dakota Highway 46. And so the Planning Commission recommended approval. of the variance from 20 acres in agriculture district to 1.42 acres in Yankton County. Said property is legally described as tract A1, or excuse me, tract 1A, and north half of the northeast quarter, excluding the Arneson Tract 1 and excluding the west 539 feet of the east 1,371 feet, and excluding the west 209 feet, the east 1,580 feet, the north 296 feet of the north half of the northeast quarter. Also excluding Irene City parcels of Section 1, Township 95, Range 54, hereinafter referred to as Marindale Township, County of Yankton, State of South Dakota. E911 address is to be announced, South Dakota Highway 46, Irene, South Dakota. Jason has intentions of doing a glass repair shop, small auto repair, no salvage. He will have a restroom in the facility, so he does have to have a certified septic system. And all of those are in the findings regarding the lot. And he does have sufficient access. And it's actually going to be combined with another lot that was previously platted, and he'll have approximately 2.5 acres that he's going to have his business on. Any questions for me?
Any questions, Pat, on the variance? So this is an ag district, though.
This is an ag district. It doesn't warrant to do a rezone on it. We don't have enough business going up that way. I don't see any in the near future, within the next 5 years, of any real expansion there, so it's not quite time to do a rezone. So it's more appropriate to go this route and then do the conditional use permit regarding the business.
This is immediately west of the county line, correct?
Immediately west, basically, if you know the rodeo ground over there, it's on that side of the road, and it's immediate west of that driveway. Currently a cornfield, but it'll be a highway frontage business.
Any other questions for Pat from the commission on the variance? At this time, we'll take public comments in favor of the variance for Mr. Jatten. Please approach the podium, if so, and say your name. Last call. Anyone speak in favor or opposition? Seeing and hearing none, we'll close public comment at this time on the variance for Jatten. Any questions of the commission of Pat? Hearing none, I entertain a motion on the Jatten variance.
I move approval of the Jatten variance.
Second.
Motion, we have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next on the agenda is a conditional use permit for Jatten.
So this is a conditional use permit to allow the commercial business, which would be an agriculture district. The proposed business is an auto glass and light automotive repair. We did talk, there will be no salvage. And like I said earlier, the septic system will be a requirement. He does plan on having restroom facilities there in the shop. And so it was recommended for approval by the Planning Commission to allow a conditional use permit, and let me just find the, based on findings of fact dated August 14th pursuant to Article 18-1805, to operate a commercial business and agriculture district in Yankton County. Said property is legally described as Jatten Tract 1, northwest quarter of the northeast quarter of Section 1, Township 95, Range 54. Hereinafter referred to as Marindale Township, County of Yankton, State of South Dakota. E911 address will be determined, South Dakota Highway 46, Irene, South Dakota. Mr. Jatten plans on building a 50 by 60 shop on the facility, and it will have a restroom, so that's why we have the septic system as a requirement. All signage will have to meet Article 14's requirements. And as I say, he does have his utilities. He has plenty of off right-of-way parking. And he has access off of Highway 46 with the site plan that is suitable for emergency vehicles in their turnarounds. So he's met the requirements for a conditional use permit.
Any question of Pat from the commission in regards to the conditional use permit for Mr. Jatten? There are none, I'd open up the floor for public comment for or against this conditional use permit. If so, please approach. We'll close public comment at this time. Any questions of the conditional use permit from the commissioners? If there are none, I'd entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the conditional use permit for Jason Jetten,
Based on findings.
based on findings of fact.
We have a motion, is there a second?
Second that.
Great. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next on the agenda is a variance for Doug Stevens.
So Mr. Stevens requesting a variance of minimum yard requirements, and it was recommended for approval of the Planning Commission based on findings of fact of August 14th, minimum yard requirement in the front yard from 100 feet to 93 feet, in the rear yard from 50 feet to 15 feet, and one side yard from 25 feet to 15 feet in a commercial district in Yankton County. Said property is legally described as the east 135 feet, the west 335 feet, excluding the south 942.85 feet, excluding lot H3, the south half of the west half of the west half of the northwest quarter of Section 15, Township 93, Range 56, hereinafter referred to as Utica South Township, County of Yankton, State of South Dakota. E911 address is 3706 West 7th Street, Yankton, South Dakota. By roll call vote, 5 members present voted yea, 1 member present voted nay. The request is a duplicate of what Mr. Stevens had requested a number of years ago. It's an existing building that's just being completed. The variances are high. The 93 feet will line the front end of the building up with the existing structures that are there, which would be the motorcycle shop, the existing building that Mr. Stevens is currently building in his proposed structure. Those will all be, the frontage will be lined up. The lots, if you take a look at your information and in your findings, the lots are very narrow. They're narrow and they're long, and so they're very difficult to meet these commercial setback requirements. So the hardship is that they're pre-zoning lots, and so they're very difficult to comply in the yard requirements. It is a highway frontage lot. It is in harmony with existing structures. So with the given condition, the Planning Commission recommended approval. Any questions for me? I've had no comments, public or within the meeting there. And also we've had no at the office.
This is where that brand new building's going right now,
Yes.
correct?
Yeah, the new building's there. What he's going to do is back up a storage unit right up against stringers, the backside of stringers. So in the picture here, you see whatever those beams are, and he says that's construction material for the building that he's gonna build. The new building is not on this map, but he pushes it over really close to the stringers line so that he has room enough to turn his campers around in there, I guess. So what's going along here is a long storage building right up against the lot line there behind the stringers.
Questions for Pat?
Pat, how wide is that lot?
Total lot width.
How wide is that area from the west side to the east side?
I'm looking here to see if I've got it down. Mr. Stevens here?
135 feet.
Oh.
Yeah,
On this sketch here, Don, it says 135 feet, right? Is that what you're asking?
I think
Let me
that's,
I know he's got a good sketch back there too.
Shows the lot 135 feet.
135.
So, Pat, as I look at that aerial with Don's question,
I've got, it's 270 feet. The one lot that we're working with right now, each lot is 135 feet wide and is 304 feet long.
so as we look at that aerial, that yellow line in the middle is the property boundary, but he owns both.
He owns 2 lots there,
And there's no fence or anything in the middle.
correct, between the two. No. the fence surrounds the two lots.
And it's solid concrete, is it not, between his lot and Stringer's lot? There's not any soil left there, is there?
It's all concrete that I can tell. And Stringers did receive a variance. Tom was here a little bit ago. I think he expected the meeting to start at 4:40. Stringers did receive a variance of the same type of variance. They received a 15-foot variance back in November 6 of 2014 for their addition to their, which is called Stringers. Okay, then Tom, the biggest thing that Tom wanted to visit about, and that we are already talking about it with Mr. Stevens, is that the drainage needs to be proper coming across there. And it does have to run in the back end of Tom's facility there, or Mr. Naker's facility. So if you take a look at your picture there, if you look on the far south end of the facility there, you're going to see where you see drainage by cement culverts or cement drainage on that picture. That'd be the south end of it. That drainage has to be moved further south, and then it's going to go underground until it goes to Nome Street. Or excuse me, not Nome, that's not Nome, what is it? Deer Boulevard. So we're going to move this drainage here, it's going to move down to here, and then it's going to go underground until it gets to Deer Boulevard. So it's a storm sewer setup is what we're doing there.
So does that need to be part of this?
Tom wanted to discuss that, but we've already talked about it on his end, on Mr. Stevens. I certainly can put it in so it's in black and white, but he does know we have to do that.
I think it would be better if we did put
Okay.
it in black and white.
Yep. That's what it's for.
On this picture that we've got, the right-hand lot that appears to have a building in there,
That's that new building, John.
that's all there in Mr. Stevens area, right?
That's all covered with this new building that you see.
Really has got 135, 270 feet to turn campers around at the bottom end of his lot.
Okay, let's look at the mapping again. Okay, that parcel number with the number 522. You see, that'd be the one to the right. You see it there? That has the building on it. Almost 3/4 of that particular lot is full with the building today that he just finished. That's not in this 2017 picture because he built that building this year, 2018.
And where did he line that up with the picture that is in the building?
So the building's going to go on 521 that we're talking about now, which then borders the Stringers. Okay, and then your space in the middle.
What I'm objecting to, and
Okay.
maybe this will help clarify it,
Okay.
is the reason for the variance is because turning campers around
Between the two buildings.
between the two buildings.
Yep.
Now, he's got 80, 135. He's got 55 feet plus, looks to me like the whole 130, well, whatever it is over to the new building.
Well, the other new building is in line with the other building.
Well, then he's got maybe
He's got,
100 feet.
According to the drawing,
he's got 82 feet
82 feet.
between the two buildings. This is what he's putting the between the two buildings is 82 feet.
so essentially about 40 feet from each property line.
Yep,
On the center.
yep.
Depends on where he wants to park things, I guess, or how much he wants to park in there. That's a lot of room to turn around.
Yep.
He's got a lot of boats out there too, doesn't he, Pat?
Excuse me?
Is this Sealand Marine, am I thinking?
Sealand Marine,
So he's
yes.
got boats out there as well.
Yes,
Yeah.
He's got a building to the rear too, doesn't he?
yes. He owns he owns the rear lots too. But that's,
So we're only talking about a variance on the side lot, 15 feet, am I correct? On the
15
Stringer side.
on the Stringer
Which would
side,
be which would be the west property line.
correct.
And that's 40 to 15, is it, or 30 to
25. The rear lot line is 50.
25 to 15, okay.
Other questions for Pat?
Now, if that lot, that west side of that lot, that fence that's in there, if it were not a chain link fence, it may not be as objectionable to people sitting at stringers.
Yeah, yeah.
The principal of putting a fence up there, so people didn't park in his lot.
I don't care.
Um,
I'm just saying, it's packing things in really tight, and that's what we wanted to get away from out there.
Any other questions for Pat in regards to the variance? My only question for you, Pat, is just on that fence. I don't have an objection to the chain link fence. That's their right to do so, but the barbed wire running across the top, is that allowed on our zoning now?
Yes, in the
It is.
commercial it is.
Okay.
You'd have to go back to building code. We don't have a code on it, but commercial allows it. It's been asked quite a bit.
Okay.
So say I own a fence, and the guy across the fence, he didn't want to repair it or do anything with it. Isn't it state law that I can go in and replace that fence and put a new fence in and bill him for half of it?
I'm not familiar with that, but I do understand that's how that works. From my farm days, that's exactly how that works.
Yeah, there's laws about that, there's different directions
Yep.
that people are responsible for.
Any other questions for Pat in regards to this variance? At this time, we'll open up for public comment on this variance. Anyone have any comment, pro or con? Seeing and hearing none, we'll close public comment. Any other questions for Pat from the commission? If there is none, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll just make a comment. I drove out and looked at it after our meeting. I voted for it at the meeting. But looking at where the building is, where I suspect snow may drift, and the closeness of everything that's getting backed in there, which is adverse to our zoning in that area, I've probably changed my mind. And that's why.
Well, and I'm the lone no vote at the planning commission because of that reason.
Any other comments? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion.
Well, the motion is to, I guess, approve the variance, stipulating that the drainage on the south end of the property will go underground and drain into the ditch at Deer Boulevard.
Are you making a motion? Because there is no motion.
No, that would be, I just wanted to show what the motion needed to be.
Okay.
So I will make a motion that we approve the variance with the stipulation that the drainage has to go underground at the south end of his property and exit into Deer Boulevard ditch,
Based on,
based on the recommendation of the planning commission and the findings of fact.
so we have a motion on the table. Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Ray? So the motion is on the table with the noted change.
Yes.
I will do a roll call vote. Patty?
No.
Ray?
No.
Don?
No.
Gary?
No.
Todd?
I'm going to say yes. Motion fails, lack of supermajority. Next item on the agenda is a variance for Robert Ostemore. I hope I pronounced that properly.
Yes, this is minimum variance for minimum lot requirement. It's based on findings of fact. The planning commission recommended approval from 20 acres to 12.15 acres in an agricultural district in Yankton County. Said property is legally described as Lot F-2 and Lot F-3, northeast quarter of Section 3, Township 93, Range 57. Hereinafter referred to as Ziskoff South Township, County of Yankton, State of South Dakota. E911 address is 43175, South Dakota Highway 50, Yankton, South Dakota. This lot is if you take a look, this is a farmstead lot that's just right west of town on Highway 52. A while back, the farmstead was split into 2 parcels or lots based on a mortgaging project. This individual came in and bought both those lots, bought both F2 and F3, and wishes to build a new home in there, and the lot lines force him to actually not meet the setback requirements. So what we're doing is that we're going to take the lot with the last 3 digits, the 600 and the 630, we're getting rid of the lot line in there, and it will now be one large lot. So we are increasing, we're going, one was 9 point some and the other was 2 point some acres. And then that'll allow Mr. Ostermore to build his home without the extra lot lines in his parcel. He has the access, he has everything he needs. I had no public comment. I did have one during the hearing, which was a citizen living across the way, in which she just wanted to know what was happening and that she was fine with this staying as a farmstead.
Since this is underneath the 20 acres, is there an ag waiver on this one?
Excuse me?
Is there an ag waiver on this since it's in an ag district and under 20 acres?
I haven't done one, but I can. There's no problem.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, this is two lots, 1 farmstead,
Yes.
so it was already, it is an ag district.
It's in the ag district. We can do the waiver on there. But what we wanted to do was combine the 2 lots and eliminate that property boundary so that he can build a home there without, because otherwise it's 75-foot setbacks and he was having a hard time meeting, where was he going to put it? Because he had to avoid that second lot line in there. So now we don't have that in
This is
there.
right along 52.
Yep. But ag, we can certainly do the, also though, there's another thing here too. This is south of 52, so let me it's in the ag district, I know that, but there is almost everything south of 52 is protected ag-wise, but I'll make notes and make sure we got the waiver if it's appropriate.
Any other questions for Pat from the commission?
Because this is south of 50. Okay, 50.
South of 50.
It's up on the top.
West of 52.
Right. Okay, so any questions? Understand what he's doing? We're combining them. Okay.
If there are no other questions for Pat, I'll open up the floor for public comment. Last call. All right, we'll close public comment at this time. If there are no questions from the commission or statements from the commission, I'd entertain a motion.
I move to approve the Ostermore variance.
Second.
Got a motion and a second, any discussion? Looks like a good way to clean up a couple
Yes, that's
lots
great.
and make it a little more simpler.
Yep.
If there are no comments, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Can I get a motion to go into regular session?
So moved.
Second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We're in regular session. Pat, plat for Mr. Janton.
Yes, so this is the,
Extension of last.
is the plat for legally described as Yankton Tract 1, northwest quarter of the northeast quarter of Section 1, Township 95, Range 54. Hereinafter referred to as Marindale Township, County of Yankton, State of South Dakota. 911 address is to be announced, South Dakota Highway 46, Irene, South Dakota.
Any questions for Pat on this plat? Any public comment on this plat? I entertain a motion on the Janton plat.
Make a motion to approve the Jason Platt, Janton Platt.
Janton plat.
Janton plat.
Second.
Got a motion and a second, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next is the plat for Robert Ostemore.
So with the Ostemore plat, this is legally described as Lot F23 of the north half of the northeast quarter of Section 3, Township 93, Range 57. Hereinafter referred to as Ziskoff South Township, County of Yankton, State of South Dakota. E911 address is 43175 South Dakota Highway 50, Yankton, South Dakota.
Any questions for Pat on this plat? Any comment in regards to this plat? Hearing none, I entertain a motion.
I move approval of the Ostemore plat.
Is there a second?
Second.
Deb? Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Are you opposed?
I oppose, yeah.
Motion carries. All right.
I got one more thing I want to discuss real quickly, real fast. When it comes to cleaning out streams like that, to just for your information too, that is not necessarily, that's a multifaceted, multi-departmental project. The floodplain gets quite involved with it too, so it isn't just the Corps. And we have very strict rules how we're able to do that and go in there and clean out those types of things. There are some funding available. Again, this goes back to mitigation like Mr. Shearsley talked about earlier. But this isn't something that Mr. Gus did as the highway superintendent can just reach down there and grab that out of there and make that go away. There's multi-people that need to be involved with that. And we are working on it. We haven't been ignoring any of that. But I just want you to know that we can't just point our finger at one department and say, clean that up, because it's a lot bigger project than that, okay? So we're quite aware of that, and we're working very hard on that. But the monies need to come. That one there comes and goes. I think you also have to see how much it's been gaining on the railroad too. You know, it's really been bad down there over the years. But it does take money, and we can work with mitigation, and that's a good mitigating tool. So we can do that, but it takes time.
You know about it for quite a while.
Pat, I got a question. The junction of 81 and
46?
46 is becoming kind of a junkie up there. Is that?
I got two letters out to both of them.
Down trucks are sitting there now, and there's.
I got letters out to, they are underneath my public nuisance and we've got letters out to them. And they're in the process, we will get that cleaned back up. It is what it is, I know we'll just keep on it.
How long have you known about this?
That particular one, it comes and goes. But we have known about this since, I've been trying to clean them up since I got the floodplain.
Been like that since?
That one hasn't, that comes and goes. That one there had very few on there in May. So that's gathered since May.
It came up the last time.
Yep, that's gathered since May. Now, which event it was, I'm not sure. But it didn't have very many then, but it's a big project.
Yeah, I took this last week when they inspected the bridge.
Okay, I just want you to know, nobody's ignoring that stuff.
Thank you, Pat.
Thanks,
Paul?
Pat.
You bet.
There you are. Approval of emergency management state and local agreement.
Yep, I
Or
sent
SLA.
SLA, better known as.
I'm trying to get rid of all these acronyms on the agenda so people.
Yeah, state and local agreement. It's an agreement between the county, we have with the state that offsets some of the costs within the office. I sent you the docket. I hope everybody had a chance to read it. There was just a couple things that got changed in it. Basically, they're just going to be covering salaries, benefits, and training expenses, stuff like that. Where before, if I had some work done in the EOC and we still had monies left over, that won't qualify anymore. EOC, Emergency Operations Center, sorry.
Thanks, Paul.
Yep. So things of that nature, anything within the department, as long as we never went over that dollar amount of what this year was about 40, I think we're going to see about $45,000 from the state reimbursement back through the state and local agreement. Next year, they kind of configured it up and stuff. But anyway, I just wanted everybody to get a good chance to read the document. You've seen they had some colorful green and yellows within the document that the state highlighted for us this year. But I just need you guys, it's a good thing. I'm all gung-ho about doing it because it does help us out considerably. But I just need your approval to move forward and have Todd cite it, and we'll send it to the state for final approval.
Questions for Paul? So this is for your position alone?
Correct, yep.
This is an annual thing.
Yes, we do this every year. I'm not gonna, if you read the whole page at the very bottom, I won't bring it up, but it would,
Saw that on there.
if that would be, it would also apply to that too, but we won't talk about that.
I'll never fault you for asking.
Okay. But that would be a second, that would be another
Will not
thing.
fault you for asking.
Okay, anyway. But anyway, we need this document signed, if you would.
Any questions for Paul? Hearing none, you need a motion on this, don't you, Patty? Yeah. Hearing none, entertain a motion.
I move to approve the emergency management state and local agreement.
We have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
A second? Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
I oppose.
Motion carries.
I'll check it out with Patty later.
Okay.
Figure out behind schedule, so I'll be
All right. E911 Board Recommendation and Dispatch Project. Julia Hussein, Clint Kleitz.
Hi, Clint Kleitz, Lieutenant with the Sheriff's Office here in Yankton.
And I'm Julia Hussein, Dispatch Supervisor for City of Yankton.
I guess we could start off with, at a prior commission meeting, the City of Yankton made a request for a capital funding project. And at that time, the commission wanted a recommendation from the E911 Advisory Board. The board did meet on August 15th, 2018, and it was a unanimous vote to support the project with condition. And that condition being that I think we're talking 2019 budget would stay in the fund along with a $100,000 reserve to cover any unforeseen expenses that might come up outside of the budget. With those two items being held back, the board would vote to support the remaining amount of the fund to the project. It does appear that the amount was $400,000. It does appear that that couldn't be done in one payment, but it probably could be done in two throughout the year of 2019. We got a estimate of calculations from the auditor, and I don't know if you have those with you.
They're in our packets, yes.
Okay. So you can see that the balance at the end of the year is estimated to be $525,000. The estimated revenue that comes throughout the year at, I believe, Patty, a rate of about $18,000 a month. That would, by the end of the year, the fund would be $742,000 minus the 2019 budget and that $100,000 reserve. You can see that there would be approximately, if these calculations come out anywhere close, would be about 414, which would support the request.
So I want you to, just for everyone's knowledge, revenue comes from the E911 tax everybody pays on their phone, cell phone, and this money is designated, can only be spent on E911 expenses only.
Correct.
You just talk about a little bit about what is this money going for in E911?
So the city is working on a radio project right now. It's a multifaceted project that includes upgrades to the PSAP, Public Safety Answering Point, which is the dispatch center, council replacement of the radio councils, and then the infrastructure, which supports that. That includes a antenna that will need to be placed on the east side of our building, and then associated infrastructure replacements.
Just for clarification, this is not for the radios alone for the police department.
Correct.
This is for
The PSAP, the public safety answering points, part of the project is what the request was made for.
And you do that for the city and the county?
That's correct.
county, state. Right.
Anybody that calls in?
Correct.
Then you said there'd be some upgrades to where the public enters. The glass where you speak with the dispatcher, is that going to be replaced?
Nope, that's not part of this project.
Is that bulletproof?
Resistant, bullet resistant,
But not bulletproof?
not to my knowledge.
That's not part of this request, correct?
Correct. That's not part of this project at all.
I sit on this as a liaison. In fact, I'm the one who made the motion on this in the meeting. And this has been something that's been talked about probably for 2 or 3 years.
Correct.
So my biggest request on this motion is what they've put out there is to have a reserve. Because we all know that things happen. I asked Julia and Clint, who chair the committee, to just make sure they get the numbers and leave that reserve. So I think it's a very valuable piece of for the community. I would support this motion.
I guess I'd like to have a little more than $100,000 now, just in case something.
Now, this is in the E911 fund buffer.
Correct. You have 100,000 already, so so you're only gonna have 113,000 in the E911 fund, correct?
We're replenishing it every month, are we not?
Yes.
You're asking for
That's
this to be in 2019 distribution.
Correct. That is correct.
Then we'll have to also change the budget next.
Correct,
when
yep.
we approve it.
We'll have to change the budget, but we're talking about not 2018 requests, we're talking about a 2019.
That is correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
I realize that.
And you said it could be in 2 payments, or?
That, yes, that is correct.
Yeah, if you look at those numbers, there would, at the end of the year or beginning of next year, 2019, there would be approximately a little less than 200,000 left if you're holding out the budget and the 100,000 reserve right away. At that point, you could make a payment then of whatever you felt comfortable with, and then
But we have
as
to
the
have an
year,
exact number, though.
yeah, these are projections. As the year went by the end of the year, there would be accumulate another 216,000 approximately. These are all estimates, but that's what it has been. So then there could be another payment, say, towards the very end of the year.
So as I look at the calculations, we're estimating at the end of 2018 to have a balance of $525,498. Do we have the rest of 2018, what we've budgeted, deducted from that number for 2018?
I believe that was the anticipated end-of-year budget based on what is yet to come in and what will go out.
This
And
is for as of 19.
No, but the,
This is about from at the end of 2018, 525, that's the estimated balance.
at the end of the year.
minus the distributions for the 2018 budget.
Yeah, this is all for 2019. The 2019 budget is in there, 227, the estimated revenue for 2019, your $100,000 buffer, and then the 413 is at the end of 19.
So as I look at this, at the end of 2018, whatever's been budgeted for 2018 is spent. We have $525,498 left. Do I understand that correctly?
Yeah, they're just.
And it's an estimation, yep. Minus, we've approved for the 2019 budget, $227,926, correct? And then you take off that 100,000 for a buffer, gives us about $197,000
Correct,
to be applied to the project
right away.
in 2019.
Yes.
So for 2020, are we gonna have to come back for a second motion for 2020?
Yes.
Because they're two different budget years.
Okay, I'm not following your calculations, I'm sorry.
So if you look at the 525,498,
Correct.
that's what's expected to be in the account
At the end of
this year.
2018, correct.
minus distributions. For the 2019 calendar year, we've already budgeted 227,926.
But we also have the 216 coming in.
Yeah, so I got 742, 424, and then subtract.
The estimated revenue coming in would
Correct.
pretty much make up the other half. That's what I'm saying, and that would be accumulated by the end of
So that's
2019
514.
estimated.
498.
The 216 is for the whole year.
Mhm.
Correct, but so is the 227 budget. So they very closely offset. And typically what we're spending is closer to 170 to 180.
Yeah.
The budget is 227, but we typically do not spend that.
So we could say, whatever the amount we would agree to, say it's 400,000 for round numbers. Payable in 2019 for 200,000 on one date and 200,000 at the end of the year.
Correct.
Would that work out, Patty? I mean, with
You
it,
guys decide.
so, okay. That would give you about if it was 400,000, you'd have about 113,500 based on these projections buffer at the end of 2019.
Right.
Questions for anybody?
So I want to step back and ask Patty what she would prefer as a buff. You didn't think 100 was enough. What were you?
I would like to see at least 200,000 in there, just in case there's something comes up. And I know you don't always spend, I know you only spend 180. I mean, you can come back next year if there's more than what's estimated in here. We can always do a supplement to add to it. I don't want to put the county in a bind if something come up.
But if someone would come up to spend on the E911 fund, that'd be designated revenue, right?
Yes.
And designated expenses. So it's not general fund dollars.
No.
Based on these numbers here, it's a little bit higher, it's 414, 498, but I mean, that would make 114,498 that's left over. And then we're augmenting every month
Well, we're augmenting every month, but they've already factored in
on
2019
the revenue,
numbers.
you're right.
Any other questions or comments?
Well, it takes 5.5 months to get your additional 100,000. That's a rate here. On here.
And there's already more than a year in there right now.
And there might, in 2019, you might have more in there. You know, if they don't spend that.
And just to make sure everybody aware who sits on this, you have Clinton Julia, chair of the committee. You have the chief of police, you have the sheriff, you have EMS, you have emergency management. You have, there's about 10 to 12 of us in the room.
That's correct.
Included with Dwayne Johnson, who's the supervisor for the dispatchers, am I correct?
That's correct.
So this is a recommendation that all of your emergency management sat in on in the discussion.
That's correct.
I think it's something that we need to do.
Any other comments or questions? So I'll entertain a motion, but the motion's gonna need to be for a specific dollar amount. And if we want to payable in 2 different timeframes, that needs to be stated in the motion. If we want it at one time, that needs to be stated in the motion.
Patty, would it help if it was in 3 payments instead of 2?
No.
Nope.
No, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Whatever you guys decide.
I'll make a motion that we fund the E91.
Here's one.
911
Board recommendation?
E911 board recommendation on dispatch project for $400,000 in 2 payments in 2019, one early and one at the end of the year.
Give me a little more definite dates.
One by the end of March and one by the end of December.
All right, the motion on the table is $400,000 in 2019, one at the end of March and one at the end of December. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second, any discussion?
The estimated revenue is a guaranteed thing, it just comes, right?
That's correct.
It don't get bigger, don't get smaller.
Well, it
It's
could get
based
bigger if
on-
you got more phones, right?
Correct. It could change.
Yeah,
It's fairly
so
steady.
It's,
We're talking about 5 months, if something breaks down and 100,000 isn't enough to get. It's not,
Basically. $90,000, if you took 18,000 times 5, it's 90,000.
but we do start the year with the 525,000 in it. That's the end of year projection, plus the monthly revenue that's coming in. So a $200,000 payment isn't going to deplete the fund.
it's better than most of the things the county sees. Maybe we're just surprised.
Any other comments amongst the commissioners? Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yep, thanks, guys.
Next on the agenda, Sandy Stockholm. Lewis and Clark Lake sedimentation process.
Okay, I've got some handouts.
And Sandy, before you start, I just want to remind you, if anybody wants to speak at the public comment portion, sign-ins in the back. We'll do that here in a little bit. Thank you, Sandy.
Yep.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Okay. First, I just want to thank you for making time for us today. I see you have a full agenda. One purpose that I'm here today is just to give you an update on Section 1179A of WRDA 2016. And we want to thank Commissioner Kettering for attending the July 20th stakeholder meeting that we had here in Yankton. It was very well attended. There were about 60 people in attendance from Nebraska and South Dakota. And as you know, our topic is another infrastructure topic, more specifically Lewis and Clark Lake and Gavin's Point Dam. You're familiar with the sedimentation that's accumulating in the reservoir, and right now we're sitting at about 30% of the reservoir filled with sediment, headed towards 50% by the year 2045. And this new opportunity came up this year, Section 1179A, and it really is an opportunity for local stakeholders around the lake to get intimately involved in the process of developing a sediment management plan for the lake and its future. This plan would take into an account of a broad base of different research, things that have been done in the past specifically for Lewis and Clark Lake, things that are going on right now around the world, and just other ideas that could be included for Lewis and Clark Lake. MSAC stresses that this isn't just another study. This opportunity will provide a broad, holistic approach to looking at how we can sustain and maintain the water storage capacity at the reservoir. This process is unfolding day by day. one of the first things that needs to happen, I want to mention too that our board president is here, Mark Simpson from Niobrara, Nebraska. That a local unit or units of government submit a letter to the Corps of Engineers requesting this plan under Section 1179A. MSAC had already submitted a letter saying that this plan is a great idea, we need to do this. They came back and told us that this local unit of government or units need to be the requesters for this plan. And then once that happens, then the Corps and stakeholders can develop a scope for the plan, and that allows the Corps to develop a cost. The way 1179A reads right now, it could be no more than $3 million and take longer, it cannot take longer than 3 years to come up with. However, based on the amount of research that's already been done, the computer modeling that they already have access to in regards to Lewis and Clark Lake, it's estimated to cost much less. The figures that are being talked about right now, which are preliminary, but $200,000 to $400,000 to come up with this plan. And the local cost share is 50%, federal share is 50%. And that's preliminary, I want to stress that. Until the scope is arrived at, we don't know for sure what the cost is. And we did just submit a grant application to the Nebraska Environmental Trust yesterday. And we were able to secure partnerships with various entities in Nebraska when we applied for this grant. Both Knox and Cedar counties pledged $5,000 towards that effort. So if the grant becomes reality, then they would be pledging that $5,000 each. The Lewis and Clark NRD pledged $500, and the Village of Niobrara indicated that it would be willing to contribute $500, but we need to go back to them for a formal agreement.
Talking about $500 or $500,000?
$500.
Shot.
Okay.
Shot, they might have more money than we do.
Yeah, we deal with less zeros. But just so that's clear, that's pending the awarding of that trust grant. If it's not awarded, then we would be going back to those entities and requesting a different agreement. We spoke with Bonhomme County this morning, and we'll be going back there in a couple weeks to present a formal agreement, but I think they're considering becoming a stakeholder by contributing towards the effort. And like I said, we're somewhat preliminary is in that we don't have any idea of a cost share agreement. There's been no formal letter of intent submitted, but it's anticipated, I guess. And we'll be looking for other grant opportunities in South Dakota. When we did apply for the trust grant, for purposes of the grant, we estimated that the cost was going to be $400,000. So we were looking for $200,000 as the local cost share. But like I said, that's yet to be determined. But what I came here today was to update you on the process, make you aware of what's happening, field any questions you may have. Encourage your continued participation. We do have another meeting scheduled September 21st at the Ponca Tribal Headquarters in Niobrara, and there will be 2 core staff people at that meeting, Paul Boyd and Brad Thompson. And so I guess I'm curious to hear what your concerns might be or questions.
Questions from the commission? Are you looking for partnerships from what sounds like counties, tribes, cities?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Are you, because the number you're asking for dollars, are you getting the state involved too? I mean, they have a huge stake in this as well.
Sure. Yes, we're looking and knocking on any doors that we can find and look for suggestions and recommendations from boards like yours for input. And I guess I'd like the county to consider what it might feel is appropriate or doable, and we can certainly come back with more information in a couple weeks. I think we would have some.
Are you asking for a pledge? You're not asking for the money up front, or what?
Well, no, not at this point, because we don't have a cost share agreement that's being discussed yet. The process hasn't yet gotten rolling except for informal discussions with the Corps of Engineers and stakeholders.
Are they a stakeholder?
They would be under Section 1179A. 50% of the cost needs to be met federally.
How much?
50%.
And so how much do you think you have to raise altogether? What's your goal?
Well, if we're looking at the high side of the range that's initially been discussed, it's 200,000 for a local cost share. The low side would be 100,000, but we're shooting higher. It depends on what stakeholders want to see in the study too. We don't want it to be so bare bones that we miss something. We feel there's some things that haven't gotten enough of a real look at. For instance, like the Coker pipeline. It just hasn't received a lot of consideration by the Corps, and we feel that's one area that could be looked at closer. So it's a real opportunity for local stakeholders to get involved. Like for flushing studies, those kinds of things, we hear about what happens after it's already been looked at, and then you can.
You're looking at rural water districts?
Mm-hmm. Sure, the Lewis and Clark NRD, one of their projects is the Cedar Knox Rural Water Project. So they did offer support for this effort.
And BY?
They'll be on our list to consult or to ask.
And the big one going to Sioux Falls?
Lewis and Clark will definitely visit with as many entities as we can.
Any other questions for Ms. Stockholm?
I can make just a little comment. We are talking with the city of Yankton also to be a stakeholder in this. Counties throughout the.
Will you state your name for the record, please?
Mark Simpson.
Thank you.
And I'm president of the MSAC. This sort of problem is going on system-wide. All 6 main stem dams have problems. It's just Lewis and Clark is the smallest, so it shows up the fastest. And we are having problems with that Cedar Knox Rural Water District. Their intake pipes are starting to get covered with sand. And so we're gonna get into problems with that. Eventually, all of them will get involved in this. It's a hard thing. You sit here in Yankton and you look out, boy, it looks like the water goes forever. But you get up by Niobrara and you look down and you see a marsh. And the marsh is coming, whether we like it or not. It won't be here in our lives, but it will be with our kids and grandkids. So it's something we'd like to get, and one of the things that's nice about this 1179A, we were told about it through the Corps of Engineers. It used to be the Corps kind of stuck their head in the sand and said, we don't have a problem. It's the way it is. But we now have cooperation, and it's something that we don't want to see go away. We've got an opportunity here to get a blueprint done for the upstream reservoirs, and maybe we can avoid some of these problems that have happened. And we sure appreciate your consideration.
When I was in DC here this, I think it was May, with the Yankton Chamber of Commerce, and we talked with the Corps at that time, and we were surprised that they've actually acknowledged that we do have a problem. I think we're in the top 10 in regards to bodies of water that are.
Well, it's according to one of our experts that we brought in, the most endangered in the country.
There you go. Thank you for the clarification.
So.
But to our surprise, pleasant surprise, it was nice to hear that there was actually an acknowledgement that this is something that needs to be.
And we have had, we were talking to senators and representatives and all the way up and down that we can. The states, when they go to budget, you got to get a bill through things. It's just way more complicated with the state trying to get it. But yes, our game and parks in Nebraska, we're trying to get through this Nebraska Environmental Trust Fund grant. We're hoping that we can make some traction with that kind of thing too. It's a little bit different. We got a couple of states cooperating, and I think that opens the Corps' eyes. And I think it makes our hand a lot stronger if we can have 4 senators on somebody's case instead of just 2. And then if we can get up in North Dakota and Montana, we can really get a block going. But that's what it's going to take to get movement on this kind of thing.
Any other questions or comments from the commission?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate hearing the frankness.
Ms. Stockholm, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, I'll just be in contact with Patty if the timing is right for your next meeting.
And
You're talking in regards to the pledge.
And you need a letter from our county as well? Is that what you're saying?
Possibly.
Will you use the mic just?
We do have an attorney working on some of these questions, and we'll consult with them about an appropriate agreement that you can consider, and we try to get that to you in plenty of time so you can see it before your meeting.
Okay. Anything else from the commission?
Thank you.
Appreciate your
Thanks for
time.
being patient.
Presentation. Thank you. Next on the agenda is a, excuse me, a temporary one-day liquor license for Minerva's. Has everyone had a chance to review the application? We've all had a chance to review it. I'd entertain a motion. This is for the Minerva's.
No, just one.
Do you want to, can we do both?
You can do both, as long as you mention both names.
Oh,
The other one is Minerva's and the other one's 6 Meridian LLC,
going to be at the Mead Building.
Mead Building,
Yeah.
yep.
So, one is going to be on, I don't know the dates.
One's at the lodge,
Yeah, I don't know the dates on it.
9/11 for at the lodge.
At the Meridian,
Says special event governor's dinner.
yeah. Well, I didn't see a date on that one.
You can just the license, name of the license is fine, I don't have to be.
Okay. I make a motion that we approve the temporary liquor license for Minerva's and 6 Meridian Malt Beverage.
You mean, and you're 1 day.
What?
Correct.
Temporary 1 day? Is that the
Yep.
proper term,
Yep.
is temporary 1 day? For both entities.
We have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion carries. All right, can I get a motion to go into executive session for personnel issues?
I move we go into executive session for personnel issues.
We have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion carries. Do remind anyone who wants to speak, when we come out of executive session for public comment, there's a sign-in sheet in the back. We're in executive session. Can I get a motion to go into regular session? Deb, is there a second?
Second.
Ray? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. There was no action taken in executive session on the personnel matter. Next item on the agenda is public comment. And 2 individuals that signed up is Patty Davies and Matt Winstand. They talked on the other matter. That being said, items for next meeting's agenda.
We know we got the highway department.
Yeah, where are we at getting our step on that.
Oh, it's,
That needs to be moved forward when we can.
you mean
We're
the,
talking about personnel matters.
Yeah.
it's the one we're talking about,
Personnel matters. Personnel matters.
so anyway, it's the week of the, I don't have my book with me. We got another meeting coming up, remember?
I understand that, yes.
And so, I honestly don't know if it's before the next meeting or not. Let me write it down. Did you write it down?
I probably did.
It's in September.
Yeah.
It's like a Thursday, I think.
Just remember, we have a budget to approve on the next meeting.
Before the next meeting.
18th, is when we approve the budget for 2019.
Okay. That's fine. We're having a meeting the 13th on that personal issue, and we will.
Okay.
And we'll also have that, to change the budget,
911. Commissioners have training next week in Pier on Monday and Tuesday. Am I correct, Patty?
correct. And like I said, there's motels for Sunday night.
All right. And we know about the other items on the agenda. On the agenda, what Mr. Morris was here for, that should be on the next meeting agenda.
I think Clark will be back too, right?
Yeah, Highway Department will be on the agenda for next meeting.
And do we want to put this MCAS on there too?
She said she'd be in contact with Patty when she wants to get back on the agenda.
MCAS.
All right, anything else for next meeting? I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned.